Chapter 1174. You want to save her? But can you save her? Don't act recklessly. Not only will you fail to save her, but you will also lose your life. Hearing Chihiro Snow's words, Bibidon hurriedly pulled her back and stopped her. 5 god kings of the divine realm came down to capture Guyuna alone. How could they save her? With their meager strength, they would be courting death if they got involved. Chihiro Snow was indeed a first-tier god, but in front of god kings, what was a first-tier god? Even Lucifer could easily defeat Chihiro Snow alone, let alone 5 god kings. Chihiro Snow's rescue was not only meaningless, but he would also lose his life in vain. In all fairness, didn't she want to save Guyuna? She also wanted to save Guyuna, but the current situation was not something they could interfere with. If they interfered, they would die. Although she wanted to save Guyuna, it was not worth sacrificing her own life for Guyuna. In this life, she was only willing to die for Lu Yuan. As for others, she would never be willing to do so. In her opinion, it was irrational for Qian Rinxue to rush to the rescue so recklessly. She was completely disregarding her own life. Therefore, she immediately tried to dissuade her. After all, she couldn't just watch Qian Rinxue throw her life away. Chihiro Snow grabbed Bibidon's hand and took it down. Slightly turning around, Chihiro Snow's golden eyes gazed at Bibidon. Her red lips slightly opened and said, "Of course I know that this may not bode well, but I have to go. After all, Guyuna exposed her identity in order to save me. Moreover, it was because of our message that she appeared here. Now that she is in danger, it is reasonable for us to help her. Hiding here can indeed save our own lives, but let me ask you, if Guyuna dies this time, will we be able to live with it in our hearts? Moreover, putting this aside, when Obuchi comes out of seclusion and learns about all of this, how can we face Obuchi? Don't forget what role we are playing. One is the wife. The other is the person he loves the most in his heart. The two of us sit and watch Guyuna, who is also our sister, die just like that. Do you think that Obuchi, who knows the ins and outs of this, will treat us the same as before? He will bear a grudge in his heart. As soon as he sees us, he will remember how we watch her die. Under such circumstances, do you think that he will love us wholeheartedly? That's impossible, so no matter what, I have to go this time. Whether it is for my own sake, for my sisterhood with Guyuna, or for Obuchi, I have to go. I'm also afraid of death, but sometimes there are things that are much more important than one's own life." Chihiro Snow sighed softly and let go of Bibidon's hand and slowly walked away. Looking at Chihiro Snow's back, Bibidon's pink eyes flashed and a complex expression appeared on her face. Chihiro Snow's flowers had indeed touched her, and in the end, Guyuna had still come because of their request for help. Looking at Chihiro Snow gradually walking away, Bibidon suddenly yelled, "Wait!" Hearing this, Chihiro Snow's footsteps faltered, and he turned his head and asked, "Is there anything else? Take me with you." Bibidon sighed softly. Chihiro Snow raised his eyebrows and looked at Bibidon with some surprise. This woman didn't take her life seriously before, but since she was together with Obuchi, she cherished her life the most and almost never took risks. Her behavior this time was a bit beyond her expectations. Looking at Chihiro Snow's somewhat surprised expression, Bibidon smiled faintly and said, "You are right. I'm Obuchi's wife. How can I watch my sisters get into trouble and do nothing? It's just a pity that we may not have the chance to meet Obuchi again." Chihiro Snow smiled slightly and said, "Who said that there won't be a chance? His 3 women are in danger at the same time. I don't believe that he can't sense it at all. Even if he is in deep meditation, I believe that he will wake up in time. After all, the 3 of us should be his most beloved. Probably. If he doesn't come, I won't let him go even if I become a ghost," Bibidon said viciously. With that, the 2 of them looked at each other and smiled at the same time, blooming with beautiful smiles. White, black, red, purple, and green pillars of light appeared before the 2 of them. They were filled with a lofty aura. The lights slowly faded, and the pillars of light that shot into the sky gradually dissipated as well, revealing 5 figures. Each of them radiated with a supreme sense of mystery and nobility. The two at the front were a man and a woman. The man was dressed in black, and his face was handsome with a devilish expression. The woman wore a beautiful white palace dress with gorgeous gems embedded in it. She gave off a noble aura. Her face was peerlessly beautiful, filled with an intellectual and graceful beauty. On the right of the man in black was a middle-aged man. He was rather tall and had a cold expression. His blood-red eyes were filled with a biting, cold, killing intent, and his blood-red divine armor was filled with a dense, killing intent. Anyone who saw him would know that he was a terrifying, killing god. On the left of the woman in the white palace dress was an adult man in a purple divine armor and a woman in a green dress. The man had purple hair and purple eyes. His face was solemn and old-fashioned, and his eyes were filled with sternness. The woman, on the other hand, was gentle and easygoing. Her face was incomparably beautiful, and her body exuded a fresh aura that made people subconsciously feel close to her. When the five of them stood together, their terrifying aura seemed to suppress the entire world. The five godly kings of the god world. Gu Yuna's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. She clenched the silver dragon spear in her hand tightly, and her body exuded a cold, killing intent. If she had to say who she hated the most, it would undoubtedly be the five divine kings of the god realm. These five people were the ones who caused the dragon god's death and the soul beast clan's miserable state. It really is these despicable people. Lucifer also gritted his teeth and glared at two of the five with a face full of hatred. Unlike Gu Yuna, who hated everyone, he hated the Azura god and the destruction god even more. After all, they were the ones who had sealed him away. Now that he had met his enemies, his eyes were exceptionally red. He had wanted revenge for a long time. Lucifer, Silver Dragon King, we meet again. This time, you won't have any chance to escape. We will completely eliminate you. The man in black, who is also the evil divine king, stared at the two of them and said word by word. Chapter 1175. Evil God King's voice was cold but firm. Lucifer and the Silver Dragon King were the top two wanted criminals in the God Realm. The God Realm had been hunting them all this time. The existence of the Forbidden Space Formation was set up for this goal. This time, after knowing that Lucifer and the Silver Dragon King appeared at the same time, the God Realm could be said to have sent out all their elites. Not only did they send out 16 first-level gods, but the five God Kings also appeared together. Such a lineup could be said to be incomparably luxurious. Other than the God War, this was the first time the God Realm had sent out such a huge force. Everything was done to get rid of the Silver Dragon King and Lucifer once and for all. As long as they could get rid of these two fellows, the God Realm would no longer have any worries. These people could also be liberated at ease. They could look for a successor and then go out to enjoy themselves. The kid that Azura took a fancy to is not bad. He's very suitable to inherit my position. Evil God King muttered to himself. You want to kill us? Dream on. Hearing Evil God King's words, Lucifer laughed mockingly. He had an immortal body. Who could kill him? No, no, no. I didn't say we were going to kill you. We're going to kill the Silver Dragon King. As for you, we'll seal you in the dark abyss forever. You'll never be able to come out. Evil God King shook his head and laughed softly. They all knew that Lucifer had an immortal body. So, from the beginning, they only planned to seal Lucifer. However, there were differences between seals. Back then, the seal of the first Azura god and the destruction god was still a little weak. This time, the five of them would attack together. Moreover, they would seal Lucifer in the God Realm. Unless the God Realm was destroyed, Lucifer would never be able to come out. This was the best way to get rid of Lucifer. As soon as Evil God King said this, Lucifer's face froze. His body trembled slightly. Those who had never been sealed would never know how terrifying that feeling was. He had personally experienced it. To be honest, even if someone beat him to death, he would not be willing to be sealed again. Moreover, from the looks of it, the Evil God King wanted to seal him in the divine realm forever. How could that be possible? Lucifer clenched his fists subconsciously as his aura surged wildly. Gu Yuna's expression was also very unsightly, because from the evil God King's words, she was definitely going to die this time. You want to kill me? Let's see how capable you are. Gu Yuna's purple eyes were filled with ferocious killing intent. She didn't run away in advance, which led to her being trapped by the forbidden space formation. She was a little regretful in her heart, but since things had come to this, she could only fight with all her might. Even if she died, she would drag 2 people down with her. Haha, your courage is commendable. However, with the 5 of us here, you are doomed to die. Azura, go take care of your old opponents. Leave the Silver Dragon King to us. The evil God King sneered and said to the Azura God and the Destruction God. All right. The 2 of them responded and flew out, intercepting Lucifer. 2 powerful auras locked onto him. It's you again, damn it. Seeing the 2 familiar figures, Lucifer's scarlet eyes glowed brightly with intense hatred. Although this Azura God didn't look like the one from before, it didn't matter. As long as he was the Azura God, it was enough. It didn't stop Lucifer from hating them. Lucifer, surrender. The god of destruction snorted coldly with an indescribable majesty. A purple halberd appeared in his hand. It was covered with strong, purple lightning and exuded a terrible power of destruction. It was the god of destruction's supra-divine weapon, the divine halberd of destruction. The Azura god also stretched out his hand, and thick Azura divine power surged. He was summoning his supra-divine weapon, the Azura sacred sword. Suddenly, the Azura god's eyes narrowed and were filled with astonishment. He suddenly realized that he had lost contact with the Azura sacred sword. What's wrong, Azura? The destruction god felt something was wrong and asked curiously. I can't sense my Azura sacred sword. The Azura god said with an ugly expression. The Azura sacred sword had acknowledged Lu Yuan, and Lu Yuan had obtained the right to use it. However, before Lu Yuan completely became the Azura god, the Azura sacred sword still belonged to him. Why couldn't he, the true owner, summon his weapon? The Azura god was puzzled. Did that kid do something? You mean Lu Yuan? You don't think he did it, do you? The destruction god asked with a strange expression. His weapon had been completely stolen by his successor? It would be a joke if word got out. Who else could it be? The Azura sacred sword is in his hands. The Azura god was dumbfounded. This kid is really strange. Indeed it is. The destruction god nodded. The connection between the divine weapon and its original owner had been cut off before even inheriting the godhood. This had never happened before. The Azura god was the first to hit the jackpot. Looking at the dumbfounded god Azura, Lucifer smiled widely. Oh, God Azura, you're really getting worse and worse. To think that you would let your own successor steal your super legendary weapon. You're really something. Your Majesty is impressed. Lucifer couldn't help but laugh in his heart when he saw the person he hated being humiliated by the Azura god's own successor. Gu Yuna also smiled when she saw this scene. Others might not know, but how could she not know? When something was in Lu Yuan's hands, it was completely goodbye to its original owner. After being refined by the clear air god power, the Azura sacred sword had become Lu Yuan's personal property. Unless Lu Yuan was willing, no one could use the Azura sacred sword. It was impossible for the Azura god to summon it out of thin air. After being ridiculed by Lucifer, the Azura god's eyes turned cold and his body emitted a terrifying murderous aura. He closed his eyes and began to sense Lu Yuan's location. He was originally very satisfied with Lu Yuan, but after losing so much face today, he was a little angry. Even his attitude towards Lu Yuan was a little unfriendly. He wanted to find Lu Yuan first and take back the Azura sacred sword. At least he had to save some face. As for how Lu Yuan cut off his connection with the Azura sacred sword, it wouldn't be too late to ask after dealing with Lucifer. Suddenly, the Azura god opened his eyes again. His face was as black as the bottom of a pot. What's wrong now? The destruction god asked. That bastard covered his tracks. I can't sense him. The Azura god's face darkened, and he reluctantly spat out a sentence. Lucifer burst into laughter when he heard that. Chapter 1176. He covered his tracks. The destruction god had a strange look on his face. Judging from the strength Lu Yuan had displayed, the Azura god would not have been able to find him if he had really wanted to cover his tracks. It would have been fine if it had been any other time, but now that he had made such a move, the Azura god had lost a lot of face. Not only could he not summon his super artifact, but now he could not even sense his inheritor. This was a little funny. Even an ordinary god would not have such an accident, but the Azura god, a divine king, had actually encountered such a situation. It was really laughable. Lucifer was laughing as he looked at the Azura god with a mocking expression. I knew that kid wasn't a simple character. Sure enough, but you, the Azura god, can't even control your own inheritor. You're really amazing. Lucifer's scarlet eyes flickered slightly as he couldn't help but tease. He naturally knew Lu Yuan. After all, Lu Yuan had destroyed one of his clones and split the fallen crystal in half. It was impossible for him not to have a deep impression of such a person. Originally, he hated Lu Yuan to the core, which was why he went to the Martial Spirit Palace to cause trouble as soon as he got out of trouble. He just wanted to kill Lu Yuan for revenge. But now that it was the Azura god's turn to be tricked, he felt that Lu Yuan was a little more adorable. He inexplicably felt that Lu Yuan was a little more pleasing to the eye. At the very least, if it wasn't for Lu Yuan, he wouldn't have seen the Azura god embarrass himself like this. This was a rare show. The Azura god's face was ugly, and his scarlet eyes were filled with unspeakable anger. He was also puzzled. Logically speaking, he should have been able to sense that Lu Yuan had the Azura inheritance. But now that his perception was blocked, a faint doubt arose in his heart. What was Lu Yuan doing now? He actually blocked himself. Did he not want to let him know? Was there really something wrong with Lu Yuan? Shura God's mind was spinning. Originally, he had complete trust in Lu Yuan. After all, this was a successor that he was satisfied with. But now, he had lost a lot of face, and he was a little unfriendly and angry towards Lu Yuan. In addition, Lu Yuan's behavior of shielding him was a little strange, so for the first time, he had doubts in his heart. Looks like your successor isn't on the same side as you. Lucifer laughed coldly. Looking at Azura God's ashen face, he felt a rare sense of satisfaction in his heart and continued to sow discord. Shut up. Shura God's eyes flashed with blood-red light, and a cold, murderous aura surged toward Lucifer. No matter how suspicious Lu Yuan was, he was too lazy to care. The only thing he wanted to do now was to tear Lucifer to shreds. This guy's mouth was too hateful. Haha, are you angry from embarrassment? Azura God, that's all you amount to. Lucifer laughed. His laughter was filled with disdain and ridicule, and he subconsciously tightened his grip on the fallen, sacred sword in his hand. You're courting death. Shura God spat out these 3 words with an extremely cold and terrifying murderous aura. He casually clenched his hand, and a blood-red longsword appeared in his hand. He slashed the longsword at Lucifer. This sword was called the Bloodthirsty Demon Sword, and it was a master god weapon. As one of the 5 great divine kings of the divine realm, Shura God also had a deep foundation after hundreds of millions of years of accumulation. Other than the super divine weapon Shura Sacred Sword, the Bloodthirsty Demon Sword was also his weapon. It was passed down from the first generation of Shura God. Although it was not as powerful as the Shura Sacred Sword, it was still not to be underestimated. After all, no divine king was poor, and Lucifer was the same. Other than the super divine weapon Fallen Sacred Sword in his hand, he also had 2 master god weapons, the Fallen Angel Sword and the Dark Angel Sword. Now, Lu Yuan had purified them with clear air divine power and gave them to be beat on. Facing Shura God's attack, Lucifer did not panic. He raised the Fallen Sacred Sword and welcomed the attack. Clang! The 2 swords clashed, and a large number of sparks flew. Lucifer's body shook, but he was unscathed. However, Shura God trembled slightly, and took 2 steps back. In this exchange, Shura God was at a disadvantage. There was still a gap between a Master God weapon and a Super Divine weapon. With the power of the fallen sacred sword, Lucifer had a certain advantage. If Shura God had the Shura sacred sword, this exchange would have been a draw. Seeing that Shura God was at a disadvantage, the Destruction God's purple eyes narrowed. The Destruction God's halberd flashed with purple lightning and struck at Lucifer's head. The Destruction God joined the battle. Shura God held the bloodthirsty demon sword and joined in as well. With the 2 divine kings attacking together, Lucifer was immediately under great pressure. He was flustered for a moment. "Let's go too." Evil God looked at Shura God and the other 2 divine kings and said to Kindness God beside him. Kindness God nodded, and the 2 of them landed in front of Guyuna. Dressed in a long green dress, the life goddess sighed slightly. Her figure flashed, and green divine power radiated from her body, protecting everything around her. The destructive power of a battle between divine kings was too great. Moreover, there were 6 divine kings here. If there was no one to protect them, the surrounding continent would be destroyed. Furthermore, if they were not careful, they could cause great damage to the Douluo world, or even cause it to collapse. If that happened, all life in the Douluo world would be destroyed. The life goddess was kind and respected life. Naturally, she would not let such a situation happen. Seeing the life goddess's actions, Evil God and Kindness God's expressions relaxed. This way, they could use their full strength. Looking at Guyuna, the evil god said indifferently, "Silver Dragon King, surrender. If you do, we can still give you a quick death. In your dreams. It's still too early for the 2 of you to take me down." Guyuna's expression was cold, and her purple eyes were filled with monstrous hatred and killing intent. If she had just become a divine king in the past, she would be far from a match for both the Kindness God and Evil God. However, she had been reborn, and with Lu Yuan's help, she was fearless even if she had to fight 2 divine kings alone. Moreover, she hated both the evil and kind god kings to the core. Even if she had to die, she would drag them down with her. It was simply impossible for her to surrender without putting up a fight. She even suspected that Evil God had been in the god realm for too long, and even his brain was fried. It seems that you are very confident. In that case, let us see exactly how capable you are. Chapter 1177. Evil God King sneered. It wasn't like he hadn't fought with Guyuna before. He was very clear about Guyuna's strength. Although she was a God King, she was just an ordinary God King. Although her mental strength was high, higher than theirs, her actual combat strength was only average. In their eyes, Guyuna's combat prowess was far inferior to that of the other half of the Dragon God, which was the Golden Dragon King. The Golden Dragon King had inherited the Dragon God's physical body, and even though he had only just reached the Godly Monarch stage, his physical body was still very difficult to break through, even by super divine weapons. In a one-on-one battle, he was confident that he could defeat the Golden Dragon King, but it would be difficult to kill him. The Golden Dragon King's body was too strong, and his recovery speed was too fast. To be honest, he didn't want to face such an opponent. However, Guyuna had never been known for her combat strength. She was more agile and smart, and her spatial power was difficult to guard against. This was also the reason why she had successfully escaped, and the Golden Dragon King was sealed by the God Realm. However, with the Forbidden Space Array, Guyuna's greatest advantage had been sealed. Without the power of space, the current Guyuna was nothing in the eyes of the Evil God King. Even if he was alone, he was confident he could take down Guyuna. The reason why he had called the Kind God King was just to be safe and to take care of Guyuna faster. However, the Evil God King didn't expect that things wouldn't stay the same in this world. The current Guyuna was as different as heaven and earth compared to her past self. Her strength had increased beyond his imagination. Then open your eyes and watch carefully. Guyuna's body glowed with 9-colored light, and her aura soared. She stabbed out with her silver dragon spear, and the nine-colored spear energy enveloped the evil God King and the kind God King. The power of the dragon god's heart? Interesting. The evil God King raised his eyebrows. He clenched his right hand, and a black and white long sword appeared in his hand. It was his super divine weapon, the divine judgment sword. He slashed out with the divine judgment sword, and the black and white sword energy clashed with Gu Yuna's silver dragon spear. Boom! The 1,000-meter-long astral sword and astral spear collided in the air and broke apart. Immediately, a terrifying energy storm erupted. The evil God King and Gu Yuna were both sent flying over 100 meters. They were evenly matched in this battle. Evil God King frowned and looked at Gu Yuna in surprise. You've gotten a lot stronger. After not seeing her for so many years, Gu Yuna's strength had risen to such a level, which really surprised him. Of course, I've become a lot stronger, but you're still at the same place. Gu Yuna sneered as her silver dragon spear emitted a bright silver light. You sure are pleased with yourself. Earlier on, I had only used 70% of my strength, the evil God King said indifferently. My apologies, but I only used 50% of my power, Gu Yuna said with a faint smile. Evil Godly King's face stiffened. Gu Yuna's words had completely infuriated him. The ancient God King, the strongest expert in the God realm, was filled with murderous intent after being mocked by Gu Yuna. You're good, evil God King said coldly. His body shone with a black light, and an incomparably pure, evil aura spread out. Compared to this, the Rakshasa god's evil aura was nothing. This was the true power of evil that came from the heart. Seeing that the evil God King's aura had completely exploded, the good God King stopped watching. A gentle white light shone from her body. This was the opposite of evil. It was the purest and most beautiful power of good. She waved her right hand, and the white light gathered in her hand, forming an exquisite white necklace. It was the good God King's super divine weapon, the kind heart necklace. Endless power of evil and good surged towards Gu Yuna at the same time. Gu Yuna had already stopped smiling, and her expression became extremely serious. Whether it was the evil God King or the good God King, they were all top experts. Each of them was not inferior to the first Azura god, and they might even be slightly stronger. They were the top experts in the god realm. When the two of them worked together, even the dragon god had to be cautious. Although Gu Yuna was not afraid, she did not dare to underestimate them. What a terrifying pressure! Gu Yuna sighed softly, and a nine-colored light was emitted from her body. The power of the dragon god's heart was crazily mobilized by her, blocking the power of evil and good. Interesting. The evil God King's eyes were cold as he spat out a sentence. The judgment divine sword in his hand slashed towards Gu Yuna's head with terrifying power. The good God King also shook her necklace. An endless power of good turned into huge spears that shot towards Gu Yuna. Gu Yuna was not afraid at all. The 6 elements of earth, fire, water, wind, light, and darkness quickly gathered around her. She held the silver dragon spear and launched a counterattack. Bang! Boom! Gu Yuna, the evil God King, and the good God King quickly fought. The silver dragon spear kept colliding with the judgment divine sword and the kind heart necklace, bursting out waves of energy ripples. The white clouds in the sky disappeared without a trace, and it was blue. The wind whistled in midair, and the ice was cold. Light and darkness flickered, and all kinds of elements alternated. The battle was extremely intense. Suddenly, the black and white judgment divine sword tore through the energy storm set up by Gu Yuna and slashed towards her. Gu Yuna waved her silver dragon spear and hurriedly blocked it, but a resplendent white beam of light came at her. Gu Yuna did not have time to react, and the dragon god's heart surged with a 9-colored light barrier, and the white beam of light struck the light barrier. The light barrier shattered, and Gu Yuna was sent flying over 1,000 meters away. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of her mouth. Although she was strong, and with the help of the dragon god's heart, she was not inferior to any god king, but 2 fists were no match for 4 hands. Under the pincer attack of the evil God King and the good God King, she was injured in just a dozen rounds. The dragon god's heart alone is still not enough. As expected, I still have to use Obuchi's secret technique in the end. I really don't want to use it, but unfortunately, I don't seem to have a choice. Either I'm beaten to death, or I can only use the secret technique to fight for the last time. Gu Yuna murmured softly, and determination flashed through her eyes. In order to see Lu Yuan again, in order to not die here, she had to use this secret technique. Her purple eyes flashed, and divine power surged from Gu Yuna's body. A mysterious and ancient aura rose from her body. Lin! Gu Yuna shouted softly, and her aura suddenly soared. Her silver hair danced, and her exquisite dress fluttered. In an instant, she stepped into a magical domain. Chapter 1178. The secret character of Lin allowed one to step into the divine restriction realm and be invincible against those of a higher level. Gu Yuna's secret character of Lin was only at the beginning, so it was naturally impossible for her to be invincible against those of a higher level. However, she was almost invincible against those of the same level. The activation of the secret character of Lin caused Gu Yuna's aura to increase greatly. In just a short moment, she had completely surpassed the evil and kind God Kings, reaching the pinnacle of the God Kings. What secret technique is this? The evil and kind God Kings were shocked. At this moment, Gu Yuna made them feel an extreme sense of danger. One of the 9 secrets, the secret character of Lin. It's an ultimate secret technique that will take your lives. Gu Yuna's purple eyes shone brightly. The silver dragon spear in her hand released a shocking silver spear aura that attacked the evil and kind God Kings. The evil and kind God Kings were shocked. At the same time, they waved the Judgment Divine Sword and Kind Heart Chain to block the silver spear aura. Boom! There was an explosion of energy. The evil and kind God Kings were both pushed back by more than 100 meters. Gu Yuna's attack actually pushed back both of them and gained the upper hand. How is this possible? When the Heavenly Life Goddess saw Gu Yuna repel the 2 God Kings with a single strike, a wisp of shock appeared on her pretty face. Gu Yuna was actually able to gain the upper hand against the evil and kind God Kings by herself. This was truly somewhat inconceivable. This strength was probably not much weaker than the Dragon God back then. When did Gu Yuna become so strong? Or could it be that her secret technique, the secret of Lin or something, was really that powerful? Secret character of Lin? I've never heard of this secret technique before. Where did Gu Yuna get this secret technique from? However, God Kings, you have to hold on. Her secret technique must have a time limit. The Heavenly Life Goddess's green eyes flickered. No matter what the secret character of Lin was, since it was forcefully increasing one's strength, there must be a time limit. Or maybe it consumed a lot of energy. However, no matter what, the time limit would not be long. When the secret technique's effect was over, Gu Yuna would definitely lose. However, the most important thing was that the evil and kind God Kings had to hold on for this period of time. It shouldn't be difficult. After all, they are the 2 God Kings of the God realm. The Heavenly Life Goddess murmured softly. She was still very confident in the 2 Divine Kings. It's a pity that I have to protect this world. I can't help you. The Heavenly Life Goddess murmured in a low voice. If she were to join the battle, then even though Gu Yuna was very powerful, there was no way that she would be able to take on all 3 of them at once. Sighing inwardly, the Life Goddess continued to lock up Gu Yuna's battle. As for Lucifer, he was already being suppressed by the Azura God and the Destruction God. Although the Shura God did not have the Shura Sacred Sword, he was still very strong. Together with the Destruction God, the 2 of them were far stronger than Lucifer. Lucifer could only defend himself and could not fight back. Damn it, Lucifer roared. The fallen holy sword was filled with the power of depravity and death. He slashed at the Azura God and the Destruction God. The Destruction God waved the Destruction God halberd and met the attack head-on. Terrifying lightning filled with the power of destruction drove away the power of depravity and death. Then, the halberd collided with the fallen holy sword. As the two sides were in a stalemate, the Azura god's bloodthirsty demon sword knocked away their weapons and left a wound on Lucifer's body. Ah! Lucifer howled in pain and counterattacked even more fiercely. The 6 pairs of black wings on his back swirled with black mist, and the light on the fallen holy sword grew darker. The Azura god and the destruction god were unmoved and continued to suppress Lucifer. On the other side, after Gu Yuna defeated the good and evil god kings, she glanced at Lucifer indifferently and then quickly looked away. Lucifer was still unreliable. It seemed that Lucifer would be defeated soon. Then, the destruction god and the others would be able to free up their hands. In addition, the heavenly life goddess had yet to make a move and was watching from the sidelines. The situation she was facing was actually quite grim. Forget it. Let's take them down first. Gu Yuna's eyes sharpened, and she stabbed the evil god king with the silver dragon spear. Good timing. The evil god king didn't dodge at all. He waved the judgment divine sword and slashed out. On the other side, the good goddess shook the kind-hearted chain and turned it into countless sharp swords that rushed toward Gu Yuna. Gu Yuna deflected the judgment divine sword and forced the evil god king back. Then, she swept the silver dragon spear and scattered all the sharp swords in the sky. Wind elements circled around her body, and she became extremely fast. In a moment, she was close to the good god king. The silver-white spear glowed with a sharp cold light and stabbed toward the good god king's chest. White light flowed on the kind-hearted chain, and in a moment, dozens of defenses were set up. Layers of light barriers overlapped and formed a thick white light shield. The silver dragon spear hit it, and instantly, the layers of light barriers shattered. The white light shield formed by the good god king was on the verge of collapse. The silver dragon spear tore through the light shield and stabbed toward the good god king's heart. At the critical moment, the evil god king attacked with the judgment divine sword and slashed toward Gu Yuna's head. Gu Yuna withdrew her spear and blocked the evil god king's attack. At the same time, she kicked the evil god king's chest and sent him flying. However, with this interruption, the good god king was also completely freed. The danger was resolved. Gu Yuna's pretty face was covered with a layer of frost. She held her spear and fought again. In an instant, the earth quaked, the mountains shook, and the void trembled. If it weren't for the goddess of life's protection and the flight restriction formation's confinement of the void would have exploded inch by inch after this battle, and the continent below would probably have been completely reduced to nothingness. In a battle between god kings, even the slightest aftershock contained unparalleled destructive power. Boom! There was another shocking explosion. The good god king and the evil god king were both sent flying over 1,000 meters. A trace of blood flowed from the corner of their mouths. After using the secret character of Lin, Gu Yuna's battle prowess was shockingly powerful. She suppressed the two of them from beginning to end. There were several wounds on the evil god king's black clothes and a faint footprint on his chest. Meanwhile, the good god king's neat hair was messy and his breathing was ragged. The two of them were in a rather sorry state. As god kings, when had they ever been in such a situation? Looking at Gu Yuna, their eyes were filled with fury. Gu Yuna heaved a sigh of relief. It was true that she had crushed the evil and kind god kings, but she had only been able to injure them slightly. She had not been able to kill them at all. Their teamwork was too good. Chapter 1179. The evil god king and the kind god king were husband and wife. They were very familiar with each other, and their cooperation was flawless. Every time Gu Yuna attacked one of them, the other would attack to save her, forcing Gu Yuna to defend herself. When Gu Yuna attacked both of them at the same time, although the attack was strong, it was not enough to seriously injure them. For example, Gu Yuna's attack just now only caused the evil god king and the kind god king to bleed a little. It was not a serious injury. As long as they came back to their senses, such a small injury could be completely healed in an instant. Although she had the upper hand, she could not completely take down the evil god king and the kind god king. Furthermore, The secret character of Lin was constantly depleting her divine power. She was not like Lu Yuan, who had an endless supply of divine power. By the time she could no longer maintain the secret character of Lin, the situation would be completely reversed. At that time, she would not be able to escape even if she had wings and could only wait for death. Damn the sky sealing array. Gu Yina couldn't help but scoff. If it weren't for the forbidden space formation, she would have used spatial force to escape long ago. She wouldn't have been entangled with the kind God King and the others here. That was not a wise decision at all. I can't drag this on any longer. If I drag this on any longer, I'll be finished. I have to end this quickly. Gu Yina softly muttered. Her gaze swept across the 16 first-level gods guarding the 4 poles. Her eyes flickered, and she had an idea. The reason why she was so passive was because of the existence of the sky sealing array. It imprisoned the void, making her power of space useless. She could not tear the void to hide. Since that was the case, she would break it. The sky sealing array gathered the power of 16 first-level gods. It used the power of earth, fire, water, and wind to intertwine with each other. It was a natural formation. Even a god king could not break it. Even if the dragon god was resurrected, he would not be able to break it. If Gu Yina wanted to stake it all, there was only one choice. She did not know if it would work because she had never tried it before. She didn't know if using the secret character of Lin would result in any negative consequences, but this was her only way out. She couldn't just sit there and wait for death. She had to make a final gamble. Gu Yina's thoughts spun rapidly, and her silver dragon spear emitted a shocking silver light. The 6 elements of earth, fire, water, wind, and darkness gathered at the tip of the spear, and there were even traces of twisted silver light on it. The power of the 7 elements suddenly fused into one at this moment. A terrifying aura surged into the clouds. Gu Yina wielded the silver dragon spear and unleashed an earth-shattering attack at the 2 god kings. This spear strike was extremely fast. It carried the power of the 7 great elements. The ferocious and surging aura completely enveloped the 2 great divine kings. The swift and fierce spear light was filled with the danger of death. The evil god king and the kind god king did not dare to underestimate him. Their vigilance was raised to the maximum in an instant. The divine power in their bodies surged wildly. The power of good and evil turned into a powerful attack that met the 7-colored spear light. The 2 god kings unleashed their full strength at the same time, resulting in a shocking collision with Gu Yina's 7-colored divine spear. Boom! The energy in the sky exploded like a gorgeous rain of light. The terrifying energy caused the void to tremble, but it did not shatter. The power of the sky sealing array was still extraordinary after all. Now's the time. Gu Yina's eyes lit up. She reached out with her left hand, and a loud dragon's roar resounded through the sky. A huge dragon claw that was 10,000 feet long suddenly appeared in the sky. The terrifying dragon's aura caused everyone present to tremble. Oh no, it's that terrifying thing again. Hearing the powerful dragon's roar, Lucifer trembled. His mind was in a daze. Suddenly, the Azura god's sword slashed at his back. A black wing flew out of his body, and he immediately let out a painful howl. Ah! Lucifer screamed and forced the Azura god back with his sword. He touched the wound on his back and grimaced in pain. The Azura god and the destruction god surrounded Lucifer. They could not help but raise their heads to look at the huge dragon claw. The dragon's aura was too terrifying. True dragon claw. Gu Yina's face was cold. She clawed at the energy fluctuation in front of her. The true dragon treasure technique, True Dragon Claw, reappeared in the world. Moreover, the true dragon claw this time was even stronger than before. Gu Yina, who was in the secret character of Lin, used the true dragon claw with all her strength. The strength of this attack was far beyond that of an ordinary godly king. The huge dragon claw came down from the sky. Suddenly, the space trembled violently. There was a violent fluctuation in the space, and ripples spread out. Boom! The true dragon claw suddenly hit the original energy fluctuation. Suddenly, an extremely terrifying explosion sounded, and an extremely bright light bloomed. The light was so dazzling that even Gu Yuna could not help but close her eyes. Boom! Another loud sound was heard. The surrounding space instantly shattered. The 16 first-level gods spat out blood at the same time. They were sent flying, and the sky's ceiling array was completely torn apart. The life goddess was shocked. She flashed and grabbed the evil godly king and the good godly king. At this moment, they were spitting out blood. Although the true dragon claw was targeted at the sky's ceiling array, the remaining power also wrapped around them, causing them to be severely injured. They did not doubt that if this attack landed on them directly, they would very likely be severely injured, or even die. At this moment, they looked in Gu Yuna's direction with complicated expressions. They did not expect Gu Yuna to be so powerful. There was a trace of golden blood at the corner of Gu Yuna's mouth. Breaking the sky's ceiling array had caused her to suffer some backlash. It was not easy to break the sky ceiling array this time. First, she, the evil godly king, and the good godly king attacked with all their strength. The terrifying attack of the 3 godly kings caused the void to tremble slightly. Then, she took advantage of this opportunity to use the true dragon claw under the secret character of Lin. She exploded with unprecedented strength to break the sky's ceiling array in one fell swoop. After unleashing this attack, she had less than 10% of her divine power left. She could not support any more intense battles. However, she did not need to fight anymore. With the sky's ceiling array broken, she could leave at any time. There was no need for her to be entangled with the evil godly king and the others. Thinking of this, Gu Yuna's beautiful face could not help but reveal a smile. Standing up straight, Gu Yuna looked around. With a wave of her right hand, a spatial crack appeared. Oh no, the Silver Dragon King wants to escape. Stop her. The evil godly king saw Gu Yuna's actions and immediately shouted. Hearing the evil godly king's words, the 16 first-level gods who were sent flying flew towards Gu Yuna. Chapter 1180. It's too late to stop me now. Looking at the 16 first-level gods rushing towards her, Gu Yuna shook her head slightly and a smile appeared on her pretty face. When the Forbidden Space Array was completely broken by her, it meant that she was free. If she, who controlled the power of space, wanted to escape, no one in this world could stop her. Obuchi's secret skill is still the most powerful. Whether it is the secret character of Lin or the real Dragon Claw, they're all first-class unique skills. With the combination of the two, my instantaneous attack power is even far beyond that of the Dragon God. Gu Yuna's beautiful big eyes curved into crescents as this thought flashed through her mind. Lu Yuan had taught her such a precious secret skill without any reservation. It was enough to show how much Lu Yuan loved her. After I escape and shake them off completely, I'll go back to the Dragon Valley. It's more interesting to be with Obuchi. The others are too boring. Gu Yuna thought and looked around. Just now, although she was thinking, it was only for a moment. The 16 gods were still some distance away from her, and they couldn't stop her at all. Goodbye, everyone. Gu Yuna's red lips parted slightly, with a beautiful smile on her face. Under the gaze of the 16 first-level gods, she stepped into the space crack. Gu Yuna smiled and stepped into the space crack. But at this moment, a sharp pain suddenly rose from her abdomen and went straight to her brain, causing her whole body to stagnate. Ah! Gu Yuna touched her stomach with one hand, her face full of pain and a trace of panic on her beautiful cheeks. My stomach, it hurts so much. Gu Yuna clenched her silver teeth and beads of sweat dripped from her forehead. She could feel that the life force in her stomach had changed. Damn it, it must be caused by the real Dragon Claw just now, my child. Gu Yuna bent over with a painful expression and a look of worry. Sure enough, the worst thing had happened. Under the condition of using the secret character of Lin and the real Dragon Claw, she had used too much energy. She was pregnant and finally had a problem, affecting her fetus. Originally, with her physique and strength, this situation should not have happened at all, But after such a long battle, even she could not bear it at all. It was inevitable that her fetus would be affected. Affecting the fetus was quite a serious matter, especially when she was just a few months pregnant. It was easy for her to have a miscarriage. If something went wrong, the baby she and Lu Yuan had painstakingly conceived might die in her stomach before it was born. Whatever, let's go first. Gu Yuna endured the pain and was about to go into the space crack. Suddenly, her body trembled, and she felt a sense of danger. She could not help but dodge. She saw a fiery red long sword appeared in the space crack, and the surrounding space was turned into nothingness. If Gu Yuna did not dodge just now, this sword would have seriously injured her. Gu Yuna's dodge gave the 16 first-level gods the opportunity to catch up and surround Gu Yuna in the middle, completely sealing her. Fire God, well done. A middle-aged man in yellow said softly with a hint of praise in his tone. He was the earth god of the 7 elemental gods. It's just a small matter. A middle-aged man in fiery red said faintly. He stretched out his hand, and the fiery red long sword was sucked into his hand. The fiery red sword was burning with raging flames, and the heaven jade inlaid on the sword was emitting a bright light. This man was the fire god of the 7 elemental gods. He was extremely powerful and ranked at the top of the first-level gods. He was one of the few who had a super divine weapon in the first-level divine realm. His super divine weapon was his exclusive weapon, the fire god sword. This was not a fiction. The fire god sword was clearly recorded in the book of the god of wine. Just now, he took advantage of Gu Yuna's stomachache to throw the fire god sword, blocking Gu Yuna and causing her to be completely surrounded. The 16 first-level gods surrounded Gu Yuna. Although the gap between a first-level god and a god king was too big, their numbers were still a threat to a god king. Moreover, Gu Yuna's current strength was less than 10%, and her fetus was affected. Faced with such an encirclement, Gu Yuna was unable to escape. Good, well done. Seeing Gu Yuna surrounded, the evil god king's face was filled with joy. Fire god, water god, and the rest, listen to my orders. Take Gu Yuna down. The evil god king gave the order. Upon receiving the order, the fire god and the rest immediately attacked. On one side were the 7 elemental gods, led by the fire god and the water god. On the other side were the 7 original sin gods, led by the Herculean god and the god of destruction. The remaining 2 were the sea god and the ice god. Other than the sea god and the ice god, the other 14 gods used their signature skills. Endless attacks almost drowned Gu Yuna. Gu Yuna's face was as cold as ice. The silver dragon spear released thousands of spear shadows. The power of space and the 7 elemental powers of water, fire, earth, wind, and darkness circulated crazily, blocking all the attacks. Clang! The fire god's figure flashed, and the fire god sword slashed through the sky. With terrifying power, it slashed towards Gu Yuna's head. Gu Yuna retaliated with her spear and repelled the fire god. However, her face was extremely pale, and sweat poured down. She held her stomach with one hand and held the silver dragon spear with the other. She looked at the fire god and the rest with a fierce gaze. Gu Yuna seems to be pregnant. The sea god's eyes flickered, but he did not move at all. He could not bully a pregnant woman with numbers. Beside him, the ice god's eyes flickered. She also realized that something was wrong, but she did not make a move. Like the sea god, she had her own pride. Her strength was also extremely strong, and she was even stronger than the fire god. Among the first-tier gods, other than the sea god, her strength should belong to the strongest. Moreover, she was a woman, which was quite rare. To be able to surpass so many male gods as a woman, she was a true strong woman. The Silver Dragon King is actually pregnant. How surprising. I wonder who it is that can make the Silver Dragon King willingly become his woman. The ice god muttered softly. Her beautiful eyes flickered, and she could not help but feel curious. Gu Yuna's strength was not ordinary. She was in existence at the Divine King realm. Just now, she had suppressed the evil Divine King and the kind Divine King. This strength was shocking. To be Gu Yuna's man, this man's strength must be extraordinary. After all, dragons do not live with snakes. An existence like Gu Yuna must have extremely high standards. Interesting. The ice god's red lips moved slightly as she muttered to herself. Chapter 1181. The god of sea and the god of ice watched the battle from the side, while the god of fire and the other first-level gods surrounded Gu Yuna. Seeing Gu Yuna's movements, the god of fire raised his eyebrows and smiled. Silver Dragon King, I didn't expect you to be pregnant. As one of the top first-level gods, if the god of sea and the god of ice could see it, so could the god of fire. Gu Yuna's obvious movements had already exposed the fact that she was pregnant. The god of fire was quite surprised. He didn't expect Gu Yuna, the Silver Dragon King, to be pregnant. It was really surprising. No wonder Gu Yuna suddenly had a stomachache after defeating the two godly monarchs and shattering the space-sealing grand formation. It turned out that she was pregnant, and she had expended too much energy, which had affected her fetus. Fortunately, Gu Yuna's fetus was affected. Otherwise, once Gu Yuna entered the space crack, she would be able to teleport at will. At that time, even the 5 god kings wouldn't be able to catch up with her. Moreover, Gu Yuna's pregnancy meant that she had a weakness. She had consumed a lot of energy, so it was easier to deal with her. Everyone, the Silver Dragon King is pregnant. You all know what to do. The god of fire smiled gently, and the fire god's sword bloomed with hot flames. Silver Dragon King died. The god of fire shouted, and the fire god sword stabbed toward Gu Yuna's abdomen. As soon as the god of fire moved, the god of water, god of earth, and the others quickly followed and released horrible attacks. Interesting. The god of desire swayed her slender and seductive waist, releasing boundless power of desire toward Gu Yuna. The god of greed and the others pounced on Gu Yuna together, waving the artifacts in their hands. You are a group of despicable people. Gu Yuna resisted the attacks around her with difficulty. After knowing that she was pregnant, most of the attacks were directed at her belly. Gu Yuna had to take care of the baby in her belly and resist the attacks of the 14 gods at the same time. She was really busy, and her attacks were completely messed up. In just a moment, it was obvious that she was going to lose. These bastards really have no bottom line at all. The ice god frowned slightly. Targeting a pregnant woman like this was really despicable. She was a proud woman with a strong sense of justice. And even though she and Gu Yuna belonged to different factions, she was still genuinely disgusted by such behavior. Don't say anymore. Be careful not to anger everyone, the sea god softly advised. He couldn't stand this kind of behavior either. It was a very easy task for 14 people to deal with Gu Yuna, who was already at the end of her rope. It wouldn't take long for them to defeat her. However, even though he knew that Gu Yuna was pregnant, he still purposely attacked her stomach. This kind of behavior was shameless to the extreme. However, he couldn't say that out loud. The evil God King had ordered them to attack Gu Yuna together. The fact that he and the Ice Goddess hadn't done anything was already a violation of the order. If they continued to mock the evil God King, it would only anger the evil God King. Moreover, it was inevitable that these first-class gods would harbor resentment in their hearts. Perhaps they would seek revenge in the future, and by then, it would be quite troublesome. The Ice Goddess was straightforward, proud, and had a strong sense of justice. However, he was more tactful and knew how to conduct himself. He was worried that the Ice Goddess would be blamed, so he hurriedly advised her. So be it. What's there to be afraid of? A group of despicable people. I'm ashamed to be associated with them, the Ice Goddess said indifferently. She was very clear about her likes and dislikes. If she liked something, she liked it. If she hated it, she hated it. She had no intention of hiding her thoughts. Hearing this, the sea god smiled bitterly. The Ice Goddess was still so stubborn. The Ice Goddess' voice wasn't soft, and the fire god and the other first-class gods all heard it. Immediately, their faces turned ugly, but none of them stopped. Terrifying attacks were still directed at Gu Yuna's stomach. In the sky, the life goddess frowned slightly. She was kind-hearted and had a strong sense of justice. When she saw the actions of the fire god and the others, she was unhappy. God King, isn't the fire god and the others' actions a little inappropriate? The life goddess said softly. What's inappropriate about it? The Silver Dragon King is a great enemy of our god realm. It's not excessive to use any means. I think that the fire god did the right thing. He was very decisive. When facing these soul beast remnants, what's the point of talking about morality? It's fine as long as we can eliminate her in the end, the evil god said calmly. His black eyes revealed a trace of satisfaction. Today, he was defeated by Gu Yuna and lost a lot of face. Seeing this scene, he was very happy. If he wasn't a god king, he would have picked up his sword and participated in the battle himself. Hearing the evil god king's words, the life goddess couldn't help but shake her head and look at the kind god king. The kind god king pursed her lips and tilted her head slightly. If it was any other time, she might have stopped this kind of behavior. However, today, Gu Yuna made her lose face, so she was still angry. People like her cared about their face the most. Moreover, even though the kind god king was kind, she still had emotions and desires. After being defeated by Gu Yuna, she had lost a great deal of face, so she was naturally embarrassed. Now that she saw Gu Yuna in such a wretched state, she was somewhat pleased, so why would she stop her? The goddess of life sighed when she saw the godly king of kindness turn his head away. Since the two godly kings didn't say anything, there was nothing she could do. She could only watch from the side. After all, although she was a supreme god and also a godly king, her position was only that of an enforcer god. She couldn't change the decision of the two god kings. Sigh. The life goddess sighed softly again. Her green eyes moved away slightly, so that she wouldn't watch the battle. On the battlefield, 14 first-level gods launched a crazy attack on Gu Yuna. Golden blood flowed from the corner of Gu Yuna's mouth as she resisted with difficulty. However, two fists couldn't fight against four hands, let alone 14 people. There were always some attacks that she couldn't block, causing her to be seriously injured. However, no matter how injured she was, she still protected her stomach. This was her and Lu Yuan's child, so she had to do her best to protect it. A yellow light forcefully broke through the defense of the silver dragon spear and hit Gu Yuna's shoulder. Gu Yuna immediately retreated and spat out a large mouthful of blood. The continuous battle finally exhausted all the divine power in her body. At this moment, she really didn't have any strength to resist. The dragon wings on her back flapped slightly, barely allowing her to stay in the air. Haha, Silver Dragon King died. Looking at Gu Yuna's state, the fire god sword burst out laughing. The fire god's sword released a terrifying light and slashed at Gu Yuna. Gu Yuna gritted her teeth and tried her best to lift the silver dragon spear. Clang! With a loud bang, Gu Yuna, who didn't have any divine power, trembled in the face of the fire god's all-out attack. The silver dragon spear flew out of her hand. The huge fire god sword slashed at Gu Yuna's head. Chapter 1182. The figure of the fire god sword slowly enlarged in Gu Yuna's eyes. At this moment, she felt a fatal danger from the bottom of her heart. But without the slightest divine power, she couldn't dodge this terrifying sword at all. Am I going to die? Gu Yuna murmured softly. Her expression was slightly absent-minded. Lu Yuan's peerless figure in white slowly appeared in her mind. This was the person she loved the most in her life. Unfortunately, she didn't seem to have the chance to see Lu Yuan again. "Oh, Buqi," Gu Yuna called out softly. Her face was full of reluctance, and her eyes were full of affection. Yes, the fire god did the right thing. Strike down and kill her. The evil god king's face was full of excitement. Gu Yuna was finally going to die. This last remnant of the soul beast was finally going to die. As long as she died, the soul beast would never have any chance to rise again. The rule of the god realm would be as stable as Mount Tai. More importantly, he could finally get his revenge. No one could humiliate him. Whoever dared to offend him would only end up dead. Gu Yuna was the best example. So what if she was strong? So what if she had secret techniques? In the end, she still couldn't escape the fate of death. Looking at the ecstatic evil god king, the life goddess sighed in her heart. Her gaze unconsciously looked at Gu Yuna. Although they were on opposite sides, defeating Gu Yuna in such a despicable way was ultimately a little damaging to the reputation of the god realm. As the high and mighty god realm that managed many planes, they should be open and above board in their actions. Their current methods were simply too inferior. The life goddess sighed. The sea god and the ice god also sighed. Was the Silver Dragon King going to end in the end? Goodbye, Obuchi. Feeling the terrifying murderous intent locked onto her, Gu Yuna gently closed her eyes. She was unwilling and reluctant, but things had already come to this. Everything seemed to be coming to an end. Her fate seemed to have been decided. The fire god sword shone brightly. A sharp sword light condensed on the gorgeous sword body. It was about to land on Gu Yuna's body. The sea god and the others sighed in unison. Finally, this valiant and powerful war goddess had reached the end of her life. Go to hell, Silver Dragon King. The fire god laughed maniacally as the fire god sword in his hand slashed down. Just as the fire god sword was about to touch Gu Yuna, a bright golden light suddenly appeared in the sky. The speed of the golden light was extremely fast. It was as if it had passed through space. The moment the fire god sword touched Gu Yuna, it collided with the fire god sword. With a sharp sound, the fire god sword was sent flying by the golden light. The golden light continued forward, and before fire god could react, it pierced through his body. Everything happened in a flash. Many gods were unprepared. When they reacted, they saw fire god half kneeling in the void. There was a hideous hole in his chest, and golden blood was gushing out. They could even see fire god's beating heart through the hole. Arg! Vulcan touched his wound and looked into the distance with a pained expression. Fire god. Seeing the fire god in such a miserable state, the water god, the sea god, and the other gods' expressions changed drastically. The evil god, the goddess of life, and the others were also shocked. Everyone looked behind Gu Yuna at the same time, where the golden light came from. Under the watchful eyes of many gods, a figure gradually appeared in the distance of the void. He took light steps, and every step he took was thousands of meters away. The figure gradually became clear, and his face was revealed. He was dressed in white, and his posture was elegant. His face was extremely handsome, and his eyebrows were sharp like swords. His eyes were bright like stars, and his nose bridge was high. He was extremely exquisite. If there was a word to describe him, it would be perfect. Yes, perfect. He was so perfect that he didn't look like a creation of heaven and earth. His appearance was beyond ordinary and beyond imagination. He walked over lightly, without a trace of power, but it made all the gods present change their expressions wildly. This was because in their perception, the youth in front of them didn't have the slightest bit of aura, as if he didn't exist at all. But the strange thing was they really saw him. Lu Yuan, seeing this figure, the sea god's expression was a little sluggish. He never thought that the person who appeared here would be Lu Yuan. Now, Lu Yuan gave him a very strange feeling. It was obvious that this once proud son of heaven had increased his strength to a level that even he couldn't understand. How can it be him? The moment he saw Lu Yuan, the Shura god was also stunned, and shock appeared in his eyes. But after a short while, he reacted. His blood-red eyes were fixed on Lu Yuan, and his killing intent overflowed. There really is something wrong with you. The Shura god was furious, not only because Lu Yuan had embarrassed him in front of the other gods, but he was even more furious because the successor he had chosen was really problematic. From the beginning to the end, he hadn't noticed at all. He had monitored Lu Yuan so many times, but he didn't find anything wrong with him at all. Moreover, he had foolishly given away the Shura divine skill so generously. It could be said that the amount of respect he had for Lu Yuan was the same amount of anger in his heart now. He felt like a fool who had been completely played by Lu Yuan. With his pride, how could he tolerate this kind of thing? The killing intent in his heart was already extremely strong. Lu Yuan, The evil god king, the kind god king, the life goddess, and the others were also slightly shocked at the same time. They were no stranger to Lu Yuan, and they had even held 2 divine world meetings for him. Whether it was the evil god king, the Shura god, the life goddess, or the kind god king, they all thought very highly of Lu Yuan. The former 2 even had the idea of passing on their positions to Lu Yuan. However, things in the world were always so dramatic. Their worries had come true. Not only was there something wrong with Lu Yuan, but he was also related to the Silver Dragon King. He had even severely injured the fire god as soon as he appeared. He was destined to be their enemy in the divine world. What a pity! The life goddess sighed softly with some regret in her eyes. Originally, with Lu Yuan's talent, he was the best candidate to lead the divine world to become stronger. However, looking at the current situation, he would not be able to keep his life. Even if Lu Yuan gave her a very strange feeling, there were so many divine world experts here. No matter how strange he was, he would not be able to escape the fate of death. This person must die. The evil god king said indifferently, his eyes full of indifference. He had indeed thought very highly of Lu Yuan, but since Lu Yuan was related to the Silver Dragon King, he could only kill him completely. Chapter 1183. The kind God King nodded at the evil God King's words. The Soul Beast clan was a taboo in the God realm. Since Lu Yuan was related to the Silver Dragon King, they could only kill him. Moreover, Lu Yuan's talent was too high. He was even more dangerous than Gu Yuna. Today, all the gods of the God realm were here. They definitely wouldn't let Lu Yuan escape. Why did a prodigy of the generation have to get involved with the Soul Beast clan? Why did he collude with the Silver Dragon King? What a pity. The kind God King sighed softly, and the light in her eyes changed slightly. When she looked at Lu Yuan again, her eyes were filled with cold, killing intent. Under the gazes of the gods, Lu Yuan didn't feel anything. He completely ignored them. In his eyes, there was only the beautiful girl with silver hair and purple eyes. Lu Yuan strolled forward again, getting closer and closer. His pair of eyes stared straight at Gu Yuna, full of tenderness. Obuchi. Gu Yuna stared blankly at Lu Yuan's figure. She was a little absent-minded. Her purple eyes were fixed on Lu Yuan. Finally, Lu Yuan walked in front of Gu Yuna and looked at her gently. "Now," Lu Yuan called softly. His voice was full of affection. "Obuchi, you're finally here." Gu Yuna's delicate body trembled slightly. She, who had been holding on, finally relaxed when she saw Lu Yuan. Originally, Gu Yuna was holding on with her last breath. Now that she relaxed, her body trembled. She couldn't support herself and was about to fall down. Lu Yuan's eyes were sharp. He quickly went forward and pulled Gu Yuna into his arms. Gently stroking Gu Yuna's silver hair, Lu Yuan said softly, "I'm sorry, I'm late." Gently wiping the blood from the corner of Gu Yuna's mouth, Lu Yuan's eyes flashed with anger, and a thick killing intent rose in his heart. These fellows actually dared to injure Gu Yuna. Today, none of them should even think of leaving this place alive. "No, you're not late. You're just in time. But if you were a second later, I would have really been beheaded," Gu Yuna said with a sweet smile. Lu Yuan's attack was truly a matter of life and death. The fire god's sword had already touched Gu Yuna's hair. If he had been a bit late, Gu Yuna would have died in an instant. It could be said that Lu Yuan had grasped the opportunity very accurately. "I'm sorry to have frightened you. I'll take this man's dog life. I'll use his life to compensate you for the shock, okay?" Lu Yuan smiled gently. "Sure." Gu Yuna chuckled. Gu Yuna didn't have the slightest doubt about Lu Yuan's words. Since Lu Yuan said that he wanted to kill the fire god, then no one could save him. He was doomed to die. "Come, I'll help you heal first," Lu Yuan said softly. "No, you have to save our child first." Hearing Lu Yuan's words, Gu Yuna instantly reacted. Her pretty face was full of panic and worry. When she first saw Lu Yuan, she was so excited that she only had eyes for Lu Yuan. She had even put aside the fact that her pregnancy had been affected and only remembered it now. The unborn child. Sure enough, parents are the true love. The child is just an accident, right? Gu Yuna could put aside the matter of her pregnancy for a while. No one else could do this. Child? I have a child? Hearing this, Lu Yuan was stunned at first. Then, he instantly reacted. A surge of joy from the bottom of his heart swept through his entire brain in an instant, making his whole person excited. He had always wanted to have a child. Chihiro Snow, Zhu Zhuqing, Hulina, and even Bibi Don were extremely eager to have a child. They all wanted to have a child with Lu Yuan. Chihiro Snow and Zhu Zhuqing both wanted to have a child 7 or 8 years ago, but until now, they hadn't been able to conceive. On the contrary, Gu Yuna, who had always been a woman of few expectations, was pregnant first. This really made Lu Yuan a little stunned and surprised. However, no matter what, having a child was always a joyous event. Moreover, this was his first child. But after the surprise, Lu Yuan reacted and caught Gu Yuna's words. "Nara, what happened to our child?" Lu Yuan frowned, with anger and deep worry in his eyes. "I consumed too much of my pregnancy, and these guys specifically attacked my stomach." Gu Yuna said excitedly, complaining to Lu Yuan about the despicable behavior of these gods. "Well, don't say any more. I know. Let's treat your injury first." Lu Yuan touched the tip of Gu Yuna's nose and said softly. Lu Yuan's expression was very calm, without any ripples. But Gu Yuna, who was familiar with Lu Yuan, knew that hidden under Lu Yuan's calm face was a terrible anger that could destroy everything. The angrier Lu Yuan was, the calmer he was. But the moment his anger broke out, it was absolutely amazing and terrifying. "You still want to treat your injury? You're dreaming. Do you think we don't exist?" Just as Lu Yuan was about to treat her, a discordant voice sounded. When Lu Yuan first arrived, the gods were indeed a little shocked. However, as time passed, these people had long since recovered from their shock. Although Lu Yuan gave people a very strange feeling, there were many gods here, and they were not afraid of Lu Yuan at all. With so many first-level gods, they even dared to fight with the king of gods. No matter how strange Lu Yuan was, they did not think that he was as powerful as the king of gods. So, seeing Lu Yuan treating Gu Yuna as if there was no one around, some gods could not help it. "Who are you?" Lu Yuan asked faintly. "Listen carefully. I am one of the 7 elemental gods under the god of Azura, the earth god, the highest god of the earth element, and one of the 32 main gods of the god world." The earth god raised his head and said proudly, "Oh, is that so? Then you are very powerful, but there will be no such person in the future." Lu Yuan's voice was faint. Golden light flashed in his polychoria, and 2 rays of light shot toward the earth god. Polychoria's newest pupil technique, Polychoria Light of Destiny. The strongest pupil technique evolved from the power of destiny, and it was superior to any pupil technique Lu Yuan had. Insignificant skill. Seeing that it was just 2 ordinary rays of golden light, the earth god smiled disdainfully. Layers of yellow light surged and formed a huge shield. As the earth elemental god, the earth god's defense was extremely strong. Even a half-step king of gods like the sea god would not be able to break through the earth god's defense without using all his strength. Let me show you what the strongest defense is. Looking at the huge shield in front of him, the earth god smiled proudly. Tisk! 2 rays of golden light rushed in quickly and directly penetrated the earth god's shield, and then hit the earth god in front of his shocked eyes. Chapter 1184. It pierced straight through without any hindrance. The shield that had been created by the earth god with all his might was completely destroyed by the golden eye light. The golden light that pierced through the shield hit the earth god's body directly. The earth god did not even have time to say a word when he was hit by the golden light. He was completely reduced to ashes, leaving only a yellow crystal spinning in the air. It was the earth god's divinity. Apart from this item, everything else on the earth god's body was reduced to nothingness. Even the enormous divine power all over his body dissipated, leaving not a single trace behind. Lu Yuan reached out and sucked the earth god's divinity into his hand. Fate pronounces your death without leaving any trace. Since you have never appeared, you should disappear completely. Lu Yuan put away the earth god's divinity and said with a calm expression, "The power of fate was extremely mysterious, and the light of destiny was an earth-shattering ability. The attack just now could be said to have completely erased all traces of the earth god. Apart from everyone's memories of the earth god, only the earth god's divinity could prove that this person had once existed. In such a situation, even the light of resurrection of the culinary god and the nine-color goddess was useless. There was no possibility of resurrection at all. Lu Yuan's attack had completely killed a first-tier god, completely shocking everyone present. Not only was Lu Yuan's strength terrifying, but the strange light of destiny was even more terrifying. Even the evil God King and the others felt their scalps tingle when they saw such a skill. They could not help but feel a chill from the bottom of their hearts. Who else wants to make a move? Lu Yuan looked around as the light in his double pupils shone. Seeing this scene, the water god and the others could not help but take a step back at the same time. There was a trace of fear in the depths of their eyes. There was also a strong sense of dread. They were afraid that Lu Yuan would directly attack them. Even the earth god, who had the strongest defense among them, could not withstand it, let alone them. If that attack landed, they would definitely die. Very good. Seeing the god's actions, Lu Yuan smiled faintly and nodded with satisfaction. Killing the chicken to warn the monkey was very successful. This bunch of trash. Looking at this scene, the evil god king's face darkened. A mere Lu Yuan could actually stun more than a dozen first-level gods. How useless were these guys? All right, stop cursing. Lu Yuan's skill is indeed frightening. Let alone them. Even I am somewhat fearful. We should hurry up and heal our wounds. I have a feeling that those people won't be able to take down Lu Yuan. In the end, we will still have to step up, God King Kindness said calmly. The evil God King nodded his head with an ugly expression. He also had this premonition that it was impossible to rely on these guys to take down Lu Yuan. Even he could feel a strong sense of threat from the current Lu Yuan. Life, I'll have to trouble you, the evil God King said. Yes. The life goddess nodded her head lightly and glanced at Lu Yuan's direction. She sighed in her heart. This soul grandmaster, who was only in his 20s, had finally become a true powerhouse. She could be considered as the first person to come in contact with Lu Yuan. She had also witnessed Lu Yuan's growth along the way. She had always thought highly of him, but why did such a genius end up on the opposite side of the god realm in the end? It was really the god of creation making fools of people. Her mind flickered slightly and then quickly retracted it. Pure life energy flowed from the life goddess hand to the evil god king and kindness god king. In terms of healing ability, the life goddess was naturally extremely outstanding. No one in the entire god realm could compare to her. Under the treatment of the life goddess, the injuries of the two god kings began to rapidly recover. On the other side, Lu Yuan glanced at the gods indifferently. A faint golden light barrier surged from his body and completely enveloped him in Guyuna. Although this golden light barrier looked very weak, its defensive power was actually very strong. Furthermore, it also had the ability to rebound. This was a kind of ability recorded in the second part of the Clear Chi scripture, called the Clear Chi Protective Divine Light. It was a true Taoist defensive ability that protected one's body from all evil. It was extremely powerful. Even if these first-tier gods outside exhausted all their divine power, they still wouldn't be able to break through this Clear Chi Protective Divine Light. Looking at Guyuna, Lu Yuan asked gently, "Are you ready?" "Yes." Guyuna nodded her head lightly. Her purple eyes were fixed on Lu Yuan. Light flowed in her eyes and filled with love. Lu Yuan smiled faintly. His right hand suddenly made a grabbing motion. In an instant, heaven and earth trembled. Winds rose and clouds surged. The entire Douluo continent seemed to be wailing. Streaks of nine-colored energy gathered from the void and gathered in Lu Yuan's hand. This energy was extremely lively and flowed continuously as if it had a life of its own. More and more nine-colored energy accumulated, slowly forming a nine-colored ball of light. This ball of light was imbued with extremely pure energy, and its life force aura was extremely rich. Winds howled, clouds scattered, and the entire continent began to tremor. Bursts of mournful wails rang out beside Lu Yuan's ears, and they were filled with pleading. All right, I'm not drawing anymore. I'm just taking some of your essence. Don't be stingy. It's not like I'm not returning it to you. Lu Yuan's lips twitched as he listened to the pleading of the Douluo continent's world consciousness, and he stopped drawing. I'm just taking some essence. Why are you making it sound like I'm taking your life? But this is enough for now. Lu Yuan murmured to himself as he gently pressed the nine-colored ball of light against Gu Yuna's stomach. Essence of heaven and earth? Gu Yuna couldn't help but exclaim at the sight of this shimmering nine-colored ball of light. That's right. Seeing as your fetus has been affected, we naturally have to nurture it well. Essence of heaven and earth is the most gentle, and it's the best choice for nourishment. With it, our child's foundation will definitely be more stable after it's born. Today's situation is special. Our child is more important, so we can only absorb some of its origin energy first. But don't worry, I'll return it 10 portions of its origin energy. I won't harm the other living beings on the Douluo continent. Lu Yuan explained in a soft voice. The essence of heaven and earth of the Douluo continent was the foundation of all things and spiritual energy. If too much essence was extracted, it would naturally affect all living beings on the Douluo continent, including soul beasts. Lu Yuan was naturally aware of the severity of this situation, and he wasn't going to do something like that. Furthermore, essence could be replenished. Setting aside everything else, there were a bunch of gods present, and he could slaughter a few of them, and their divine power would be enough to replenish the essence that Lu Yuan had extracted. All right, I'll do as you say, Gu Yuna said with a gentle smile. Lu Yuan smiled in response, and he gently sent the essence of heaven and earth directly into Gu Yuna's stomach. Chapter 1185. The essence of heaven and earth was the origin of all things, the source of all life, and the purest power in the world. As soon as this power entered her body, Gu Yuna's body shuddered slightly, and her entire belly began to emit nine-colored light. Her injuries began to heal rapidly, and all of them were healed almost instantly. Her abdomen, which had been in excruciating pain due to her pregnancy, was also completely restored to normal, and all of the pain had disappeared. Bursts of pure and flawless energy flowed into Gu Yuna's body in a steady stream, then into the baby in her belly. The baby was being nourished by the essence of heaven and earth before it was even born, so its aptitude in the future would definitely be unimaginably high. Lu Yuan held Gu Yuna in one arm while gently stroking her belly with the other, and his eyes were filled with benevolence. His perception was astonishing, and he could clearly sense that the baby in Gu Yuna's belly was becoming more and more exuberant. Furthermore, he could sense a familiar aura from the baby, which was tightly connected to his own bloodline. Thank you, Nar. Lu Yuan looked at Gu Yuna with a sincere expression. Thank me for what? Gu Yuna looked at Lu Yuan with a puzzled expression. I want to thank you for extending my life and allowing my bloodline to be passed on, Lu Yuan said in a soft voice. I see. Then how do you want to thank me? Words aren't enough. Gu Yuna blinked her eyes and said with a playful tone, Tell me, and I'll do it. Lu Yuan tapped Gu Yuna's delicate nose with a doting expression. I want you to stay with me until the baby is born, Gu Yuna said in a tender voice. Of course, I'll do that even if you don't tell me. Is there anything else? Lu Yuan asked with a smile. Then kill all of those detestable gods. Because of them, we almost lost our baby. Gu Yuna pointed at the gods, her eyes full of resentment. Just now, these gods had attacked her stomach. She had always remembered these things in her heart. Don't worry, none of them will survive, Lu Yuan said in a low voice that was filled with terrifying killing intent as he gently kissed Gu Yuna's forehead. His family was his reverse scale. Lu Yuan had already sentenced them to death for daring to lay a hand on Gu Yuna and his children. With a light tap, the golden clear chi protective divine light disappeared. He used the clear chi protective divine light to prevent these gods from attacking him while he was healing Gu Yuna. However, he didn't think that these bastards would be so cowardly as to not dare to attack him while he was healing Gu Yuna's injuries. This was truly an incredible display of cowardice. Lu Yuan casually waved his hand, and a dragon's roar resounded in the distance. A golden light whizzed over and fell into Lu Yuan's palm. It was the super-divine artifact that had heavily injured Vulcan just now, the Dragon Emperor draining spring spear. With the spear in his hand, Lu Yuan's imposing manner became austere. His dual pupils looked around, and many gods clenched the divine artifact in their hands tightly as they looked at Lu Yuan with vigilance. "Obuchi, put me aside. It's not easy to fight with me," Gu Yuna said softly. "No need. One hand is enough to deal with these ants." Lu Yuan pointed the Dragon Emperor draining spring spear forward, and his imposing manner rose crazily. "Obuchi." Gu Yuna patted Lu Yuan lightly with a worried look on her face. Lu Yuan was strong, and one hand was enough to deal with these first-tier gods. However, there were still the 5 divine kings of the divine world behind them. They were Lu Yuan's real enemies. If he carried her, he wouldn't be able to deal with the enemy with his full strength. Lu Yuan would most likely be defeated. "Don't say any more. I won't let you go. These guys are extremely despicable. You don't have the slightest bit of divine power with you now. What if they take the opportunity to launch a sneak attack on you? Therefore, I won't leave you alone. It's useless for you to persuade me." Lu Yuan shook his head and refused. He knew Gu Yuna's worries, but he also had his own worries. If he left Gu Yuna alone, he wouldn't feel at ease. Just when Lu Yuan and Gu Yuna were silently looking at each other, Lu Yuan suddenly raised his eyebrows and looked to the side. "Leave it to me. I'll take care of her." A spatial crack suddenly appeared where Lu Yuan's eyes fell, and 2 beautiful figures stepped out from it. One of the beautiful figures looked at Lu Yuan and said in a gentle voice. Seeing these 2 beautiful figures, Lu Yuan's dual pupils slightly flashed, and there was a bit of surprise in his eyes. "Dong Air Share, why are you here?" Lu Yuan asked in a quiet voice. Chihiro Snow replied with a faint smile. "We wanted to save her, but we were too late. Who would have thought that you would get here first? I sensed that Nar was in danger, so I hurried here. What are you 2 doing here? Go back, all of you." Lu Yuan chided. He wasn't going to let anyone else interfere with matters of the divine realm. As for Gu Yuna, he had sensed her condition before anyone else, so he definitely wouldn't allow her to be in any life-threatening danger. After all, Gu Yuna still possessed the Golden Dragon King's reverse scale. If Gu Yuna's life was in danger, he would be able to appear by her side almost instantaneously. Otherwise, there was no way that he would have been able to save Gu Yuna in the nick of time. Was this really just a coincidence? Chihiro Snow harumphed with an aggrieved expression and said, "Humph, we're not going back. We're already here, and we're trying to save her." "Exactly. We're trying to save her, and we're trying to save her. If you keep putting on airs, I'll beat you up." Bibidin's pink eyes narrowed slightly as she looked at Lu Yuan with a dangerous light in her eyes. Lu Yuan shuddered at the sight of Bibidin's glare, and he recalled how she had once tugged on his ear. He wasn't afraid of anything, and he wasn't even afraid of Chihiro Snow now. He was just a little apprehensive in front of Bibidon. She was once his teacher, and now his wife, so she was still a little intimidating. "So be it, you 2. Take Nar and stand off to the side. Look after her for me. She's already pregnant, so she can't be harmed in any way." Lu Yuan said in a quiet voice. "Gu Yuna's pregnant?" Chihiro Snow and Bibidon exchanged a glance, and looks of envy appeared in both of their eyes. The 2 of them hurriedly stepped forward and held onto Gu Yuna's arms as they stared at Gu Yuna's stomach with peculiar expressions, making her feel quite uncomfortable. Chihiro Snow gently laid a hand over Gu Yuna's stomach, and a peculiar look appeared on her face. What a wonderful feeling. Is this a child? Chihiro Snow's golden eyes flashed slightly as she sensed the miraculous life, force energy flowing through her body, and an envious look appeared on her face. Moments later, she raised her head and cast a resentful gaze toward Lu Yuan. Chapter 1186. Bibidan was also the same. She appraised Gu Yuna for a while, then stared intently at Lu Yuan with a hint of yearning in her eyes. Lu Yuan was struck by a sense of unease as he was stared at by the two women. He knew what they were thinking. They wanted Gu Yuna as well, because she was pregnant. It was just that having a child was not something that could be forced. It was all up to fate. Don't look at me like that. You're making me feel very uncomfortable, Lu Yuan said in a soft voice. Oomph. Chihiro Snow harumphed coldly, and her vibrant red lips pouted slightly. You should just die of discomfort. You despicable be asterisk starred. Qian Rinxiu muttered under her breath, her voice filled with resentment. She had been with Lu Yuan for the longest time, and she was also Lu Yuan's first woman. However, Gu Yuna was now pregnant, yet she hadn't done anything at all, so she couldn't help but feel a little envious. That's right, it's all your fault. Bibidan looked at Lu Yuan in a coquettish manner. It's all my fault? Lu Yuan pursed his lips and asked, Does it have nothing to do with you two at all? He did have something to do with the fact that they were unable to conceive. After all, their bloodlines were too powerful, so it was quite difficult for them to pass on their bloodlines. However, it was ridiculous to think that it was all his fault. Even Gu Yuna was pregnant, so the fact that they were unable to conceive also had something to do with it. What does this have to do with us? It's clearly your fault, Bibidan retorted. They didn't think that their inability to conceive had anything to do with them. It was all Lu Yuan's fault. That's right, it's all your fault, Chihiro Snow hurriedly chimed in. Then how do you explain Nar? She's pregnant. Lu Yuan said in a faint voice. How we know? We have to ask you that, Bibidan said in an indifferent voice. Lu Yuan, looking at Bibidan's matter-of-fact expression, the corner of Lu Yuan's mouth twitched slightly. Sure enough, you're ruthless. This is completely unreasonable, right? All right, you're good. You all want children, right? Very well. After I deal with them, I will accompany you until you get pregnant. Lu Yuan stared at the two of them and said with a fake smile. Being stared at by Lu Yuan, Chihiro Snow and Bibidan felt their hearts skip a beat. They had a bad premonition that Lu Yuan wouldn't mess around, right? Thinking of Lu Yuan's strength, the two women couldn't help but look at each other, feeling that they had gotten themselves into trouble. Then it's settled. Take Na and stand to the side. I'm going to get down to business. Lu Yuan waved his hand at the two women and said indifferently. Hearing this, Chihiro Snow and Bibidan gently bit their lower lips and pulled Gu Yuna to the side. Seeing this, the eyes of the water god and the others flashed. From time to time, they would glance in the direction of Chihiro Snow and the others as they secretly thought of something. Boom! A terrifying aura erupted from Lu Yuan's body, setting off layers of shockwaves. In an instant, the wind and clouds surged. Lu Yuan's white robes fluttered, and his black hair danced in the wind. Come forward and die. Lu Yuan pointed the Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear forward, and his polychoria flashed with a dazzling light. The water god and the others immediately clenched the divine weapons in their hands and looked at Lu Yuan with vigilance. However, no one dared to make the first move. After all, no one knew if Lu Yuan would suddenly unleash the light of destiny. This bunch of trash. The ice god could not help but shake her head when she saw this. Her eyes were filled with disdain. With a wave of her right hand, a 3-meter-long, gorgeous icy blue spear appeared in her hand. It was the ice god's super-divine weapon, the ice god spear. Ice god spear, self-set. Do not investigate. As the strongest person in the god world below the sea god, the ice god also had her own super-divine weapon. She gently lifted her foot and was about to walk towards Lu Yuan. Just now, Lu Yuan had killed the Earth God with a single strike. She was very curious about Lu Yuan's strength. She was powerful, arrogant, and extremely belligerent. Just now, because Gu Yuna was pregnant, she was too embarrassed to make a move. However, she did not have such concerns when it came to Lu Yuan. Wait! However, just as the ice god took a step forward, she was stopped by the sea god. What? The ice god looked at the sea god in confusion. Let's wait and see. You can go later. Let them test Lu Yuan's strength first. You'll be at a disadvantage if you act rashly, the sea god said softly. Is this guy really that powerful? Why are you so serious? The ice god was even more curious. The sea god was stronger than her and could be said to be the strongest below the divine kings. However, he was actually so afraid of Lu Yuan. You don't understand him. He's much more terrifying than you think. This is an unprecedented genius. Even in the future, there might not be anyone who can compare to him, so don't take the risk. I have a feeling that his strength is definitely not below the Silver Dragon King Gu Yuna's. The sea god said with a serious expression. Are you serious? Gu Yuna defeated 2 divine kings. The ice god was a little doubtful. How could Lu Yuan be that strong? It's probably true. Otherwise, do you think the Silver Dragon King would give birth to a child for an ordinary person with her pride? Moreover, look at her expression. She's extremely calm. Clearly, she's very confident in Lu Yuan's strength. So let's wait and see. Don't be rash. We'll act when the time comes, the sea god said sternly. That makes sense. Hearing the sea god's words, the ice god could not help but nod gently. Since that was the case, they should wait and see first. At the same time, they could let her see if this Lu Yuan was really as powerful as the sea god said. Oh, no one dares to go up. Then I'll do it myself. Looking at the sea god and the others who were holding the divine artifacts and looking at him vigilantly, Lu Yuan's lips curled into a trace of disdain. Then his double pupils suddenly narrowed and emitted a biting cold, killing intent. I'll start with you first. Lu Yuan smiled faintly and stabbed the Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear at a fiery red figure beside the sea god. This figure was naturally the fire god. He had almost taken Gu Yuna's life. How could Lu Yuan let such a person live? The Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear stabbed out, and a golden spear aura shot out quickly with an extremely sharp aura. Everyone attacked together. The fire god was seriously injured and could not resist Lu Yuan's attack at all. Therefore, the sea god, who was standing beside him, used her staff to welcome the golden spear aura that Lu Yuan had shot out. She was even shouting loudly. The spear aura and the sea god's staff collided fiercely, and the huge energy that erupted directly sent the sea god flying back hundreds of meters. Seeing this scene, the eyes of many gods suddenly narrowed. They no longer hesitated and rushed up one after another, launching fierce attacks at Lu Yuan. Only the fire god was left standing on the spot. The fire god held the huge wound on his chest with one hand. He reached out and sucked the fire god's sword into his hand. He looked at Lu Yuan fiercely, then gently shifted his gaze to Gu Yuna and the others. His eyes moved and killing intent surged in them. Chapter 1187. Vulcan didn't hide his gaze, and BB Don and the other 2 immediately sensed it. BB Don frowned and said, "Cher, be careful. I think that Vulcan is up to no good." Chihiro Snow glanced at Vulcan and said indifferently, "Don't worry, I'm here. With his half-dead appearance, I can easily defeat him. It's better to be careful. These gods are all very despicable and shameless, especially this Vulcan. He's capable of doing anything. We can't let our guard down," Gu Yuna said softly. Gu Yuna said softly as a cold light appeared in her purple eyes, along with hints of killing intent. It was Vulcan who had taken the lead to attack her stomach. "Don't worry, I know," Chihiro Snow responded softly. Light surged on her body, and the angelic armor appeared on her body. The angelic sacred sword in her hand glittered with golden light, and it emitted vigorous energy waves. Chihiro Snow's aura seeped out of her body. Her genuine first-tier god strength caused many gods to raise their eyebrows. Vulcan narrowed his eyes and put down his thoughts. He was no match for a first-tier god in perfect condition. It seemed that it would be more appropriate to find a way to launch a sneak attack. Vulcan's gaze turned to Lu Yuan, who was in the middle of a battle, and thought to himself. "Scatter!" Lu Yuan shouted. The Dragon Emperor draining spring spear shone brightly. Not only did it scatter all the attacks coming at him, but the remaining energy also repelled Water God and the others. Interesting. Let me have some fun with you guys. Lu Yuan pointed his spear horizontally, and a dazzling golden light erupted from his body. A dragon's roar resounded, and a terrifying dragon's aura swept across the sky. The five-clawed golden dragon king martial soul directly merged with Lu Yuan's martial soul, and golden dragon scales began to crawl over Lu Yuan's body. Two handsome dragon horns grew out of his forehead, and a pair of golden dragon wings flapped behind his back. While he was in seclusion in the dragon tomb, Lu Yuan had absorbed the half-step divine king's golden dragon soul ring. His soul power had long since risen from the peak of the demigod realm to the divine official realm, the so-called rank 100 realm. Now his divine power was at the peak of the divine official level. He was more than 10 times stronger than before. Just the possession of his martial soul made his aura infinitely close to that of a divine king. He had even touched the threshold of a divine king. It was precisely because of this that he now had the qualifications to challenge the entire divine realm. He still had many trump cards, enough to contend with all the gods in the divine realm. However, these first-tier gods were only worthy of him using his martial soul, the aura of a divine king, and he hasn't even used his divine armor. Obuchi's progress is too great. Guyuna's eyes flashed, and her heart was no longer worried. Her intuition told her that today's battle was in the bag. As expected, this kid's progress is great. This aura is comparable to a divine king, and he hasn't even used his full strength. The sea god narrowed his eyes. He also had some understanding of Lu Yuan, and he knew that Lu Yuan had a lot of trump cards. His previous intuition was correct. Lu Yuan's battle prowess wasn't inferior to Gu Yunis. So strong. I want to fight him. The ice god's eyes lit up, and she was eager to give it a try. A man who hadn't obtained a divine seat could erupt with an aura comparable to a divine king. She really wanted to test his strength and see how strong he was. Don't be impatient. Wait a little longer. The sea god said softly. Hearing this, the ice god could only suppress the excitement in her heart and watch carefully. However, the battle intent in her eyes was getting stronger and stronger. Terrifying kid. We can't let him go back alive today. The evil divine king, Shura God's eyes flashed with a terrifying killing intent. Lu Yuan was already so strong. If he was given more time, who knew how much he would grow? At that time, it would really be the end of the divine realm. They would never allow such a thing to happen. Life increased the power. The evil divine king said to the life goddess. He needed to recover as soon as possible. Yes, the life goddess responded. The life energy in her hand suddenly became denser, and the injuries of the two divine kings began to recover faster. It's coming. On the battlefield, Lu Yuan smiled faintly. His eyes flashed with a sharp glint. With a circle of the Dragon Emperor draining spring spear, he brought all the gods into his attack range and directly launched an attack on the 12 first-level gods at the same time. Despicable guy. He's too arrogant. The wind god clenched his teeth. There was some anger in the depths of his eyes. Lu Yuan's performance showed that he didn't put them in his eyes at all. All right, stop complaining. This person is really strong, the space god said. Then, he blocked Lu Yuan's attack. I know, I'm just angry. The wind god muttered and rushed up. Boom, bam, bang. Lu Yuan held the Dragon Emperor draining spring spear and fought with the 12 first-tier gods in full swing. Lu Yuan didn't use a single skill. However, every time he attacked, a first-tier god would be sent flying. Occasionally, an attack would land on Lu Yuan's body. However, sparks would burst out, and even the Master God weapon would be sent flying. It was 1 against 12, but it was a completely one-sided situation. This guy is so strong. What a strong physique. The Ice God was dumbfounded. She was completely shocked by Lu Yuan. Only a super divine weapon can break through his defense. This guy's body is too terrifying. I'm afraid it's not much worse than the legendary Golden Dragon King. The sea god's eyes widened in surprise. Resisting a Master God weapon with one's body was something even a God King couldn't do. The only ones who could do it were the Dragon God and the Golden Dragon King after the Dragon God's death. However, now, Lu Yuan might have to be added to the list. Ice God, it's time for us to go. The Master God's weapon can't hurt him. If we continue to fight like this, even if all the gods who stay in the God realm come, we will lose for sure. Only a super god's weapon can hurt him. We cannot wait any longer. The sea god said with a serious face. All right, I don't want to wait any longer. This is exactly what I want. Hearing the sea god's words, the ice god's eyes lit up. She held the ice god's spear and joined the battle. The sea god's eyes flashed. Suddenly, a look of joy appeared on her face. The 7th test is over. The sea god's heart has finally returned. The sea god waved her hand. Rays of light flashed, and a powerful summoning force appeared. Sea god's temple. Zhu Zhuqing gritted her teeth. Sweat dripped from her forehead. She finally pulled out the sea god's trident from the altar. Chapter 1188. The sea god's trident was radiating golden light as it lay silently in Zhu Zhuqing's hand. Is this the sea god's trident? Why is there a dent in the center? Zhu Zhuqing asked in a perplexed manner as she looked at the massive hole in the center of the sea god's trident. After completing the 6th trial of the sea god's trident, she had managed to hold on for 30 minutes against Pasizi, and after resting for a short while, she immediately began the 7th trial. Her battle with Lucifer had taught her just how weak she was, and she wanted to take advantage of this opportunity to become more powerful as soon as possible. And the content of the 7th test was naturally to pull out the Neptune's trident. She used a Herculean effort and finally pulled it out. But to her surprise, the Neptune's trident in front of her seemed to be incomplete. It was still missing something important. Have you forgotten about the sea god's heart? Pasizi reminded. What do you mean? Light flashed through Zhu Zhuqing's eyes, and the sea god's heart flew out of her forehead at her behest, releasing a burst of clear blue light. As if it had been summoned by something, the sea god's heart suddenly expanded, and the triangular cone-shaped sea god's heart transformed into a rhombus-shaped vertebra before embedding itself into the dent in the sea god's trident. The sea god's heart fit perfectly into the sea god's heart, leaving not a single gap. Suddenly, the Neptune's trident shone brightly. The golden light illuminated the entire Neptune's temple. The Neptune's trident, which had been quiet before, suddenly erupted with a terrifying power. It was lofty and noble. This was the power of a supra-divine artifact. What an impressive sea god's trident. Zhu Zhuqing's eyes lit up as she gently stroked the trident with a pleased look in her eyes. This sea god's trident might not be as powerful as Lu Yuan's Dragon Emperor Draining Spring Spear, but it was definitely more powerful than Chihiro Snow's angelic holy sword. It was also far superior to the golden dragon spear that Lu Yuan had once used. With this Neptune's trident, her strength would definitely rise to a whole new level. Now, Hulina was the strongest among them, but if she had Neptune's trident, she could defeat Hulina and become the strongest. After all, her goal had always been to surpass Hulina, and now it seemed that she had a chance to achieve this goal. As Zhu Zhuqing thought to herself, she smiled and stroked Neptune's trident. Suddenly, there was a flash of light, and Neptune's trident disappeared without a trace. Zhu Zhuqing's expression changed, and she asked, "Where is the sea god's trident?" Looking at Zhu Zhuqing's questioning gaze, Pasizi shook his head. She didn't know either. Neptune's trident disappeared too quickly, and she didn't even have time to react. Perhaps the sea gods summoned them away. Pasizi hesitated for a moment as he looked at the statue of the sea god in front of him and gave an explanation. Perhaps only the sea god could take away a super divine weapon like Neptune's trident. Zhu Zhuqing nodded slightly, but her expression was a little dark. She had only just obtained it, and it had disappeared just like that. No one will be able to accept this. Sigh, I don't know what's going on. The Douluo continent is really becoming more and more chaotic. Pasizi sighed, and there was a hint of concern in his eyes. First, the God King descended, and now, Neptune's trident had disappeared. A storm was brewing. I wonder how that guy's doing. Pasizi murmured to herself. Lu Yuan's figure appeared in front of her eyes, and her blue eyes blinked slightly with deep affection. On the battlefield of the divine battle, Lu Yuan smiled. The Dragon Emperor, draining spring spear in his hand, drew a strange trajectory and smashed directly onto the god of greed's body. There was a huge explosion, and immediately the god of greed's divine equipment exploded under Lu Yuan's immense strength. His body was also blasted apart by the Dragon Emperor draining spring spear, and his flesh and blood splattered everywhere. Since the start of the battle, the first god to fall had finally appeared. Lu Yuan reached out and grabbed the god of greed's godhead. With this godhead, he could create a new god at any time. This was a good thing, and he couldn't let it go to waste. The expressions of many first-tier gods changed drastically after the god of greed's death, and their attacks became even more frenzied. The god of destruction, who was teaming up with the god of Azura to fight Lucifer, turned pale. The god of greed was his subordinate, and he was heartbroken that Lu Yuan had killed him just like that. Azura, speed up. I want to skin that brat alive. The god of destruction suddenly increased the intensity of his attacks and attacked Lucifer fiercely. Okay, the god of Azura responded. The bloodthirsty demon sword in his hand released a murderous aura and slashed directly at Lucifer. Speaking of which, he was even more heartbroken than the god of destruction. Among the 7 elemental gods under his command, the god of fire had been severely injured, and the god of earth had been annihilated. His killing intent towards Lu Yuan was even more intense. Lucifer's face immediately fell, and he couldn't speak of his bitterness. That brat was the one who killed the god of destruction, so why was he the unlucky one? Lucifer complained in his heart. He waved the fallen holy sword in his hand and resisted the attacks of the two with difficulty. On the other side, Lu Yuan was still fighting crazily. The Dragon Emperor, draining spring spear in his hand, seemed to have become a living thing, like a swimming dragon. It was extremely agile, and many gods covered their heads and fled with one spear. The spear shattered space and hit the god of space, causing him to spit out blood and fly backward. Lu Yuan's heart skipped a beat. Just as he was about to stab down with the spear, a sense of danger suddenly arose in his heart. The Dragon Emperor, draining spring spear, immediately turned around and stabbed behind him. Ding! The tips of the spears collided, and an ear-piercing sound rang out. A graceful figure was directly repelled. Lu Yuan's heart trembled, and there was a trace of astonishment on his face. The realm of Spear God. Just now, he had clearly sensed that the other party had an extremely high level of Spear Dao. That level was not inferior to his at all. He had also reached the realm of Spear God. Moreover, the icy blue spear in the other party's hand made his skin tingle. It was a genuine, super divine weapon. Which god of the god realm are you? Lu Yuan stood with his spear and asked calmly. Ice God. The ice god held the ice god spear and looked at Lu Yuan with a face full of fighting spirit. Ice God. Lu Yuan repeated. His eyes flickered slightly, and he praised. You're not bad. You're much stronger than this group of trash. Moreover, you're a woman. It's rare. The ice god's realm had already reached the peak of the first-tier god. In addition to the super divine weapon and the realm of Spear God, this was the reason why she was only second to the sea god among the first-tier gods. You're not bad either. You're actually also in the realm of Spear God. The ice god said softly, and her eyes flickered. This was the first person she had met who was also in the realm of spear god. Lu Yuan was only in his early 20s. Not only was he strong, but he had also comprehended the realm of spear god. This was really surprising. Chapter 1189. One must know that it was easy to improve one's strength, but this kind of spear Tao was quite difficult to comprehend. In the entire divine world, there were only a few people who could comprehend the god realm, and she was the only one who had comprehended the spear god realm. Lu Yuan was so young, but he had also comprehended the spear god realm. This talent was really too amazing. No wonder the sea god said that he was an unprecedented heaven's pride. Now it seemed that it was true. Hee hee. Thank you for the compliment. Hearing the ice god's praise, Lu Yuan chuckled. Then, his face turned serious and his eyes turned solemn. The Dragon Emperor, draining spring spear in his hand, flickered. Encountering an opponent who was also in the spear god realm made his heart itch. He wanted to see how strong the ice god was. Do you dare to take my spear? Lu Yuan asked with a smile, while pointing his spear horizontally. Why wouldn't I dare? The ice god replied, her eyes full of fighting spirit. Then watch carefully. Dragon Emperor spear art. Meteorite, silver dragon. Lu Yuan shouted, and the Dragon Emperor drained spring spear stabbed out. In an instant, stars appeared in the sky. Countless starlight sprinkled down and gathered on the Dragon Emperor drained spring spear. Silver light circulated, and a silver five-clawed dragon flew out. It circled in the sky and let out a loud dragon roar. It whistled and swept towards the ice god at lightning speed. After entering the spear god realm, the five-clawed silver dragon condensed from the spear light was like a real divine dragon. It was agile, elegant, and extraordinary. It carried a terrifying aura as it moved. The ice god's beautiful ice blue eyes shone brightly, and the ice god's spear fiercely stabbed out. Heavenly Ice Emperor Dragon. It was also a dragon formed from a spear light, and it was an ice dragon that contained the power of extreme ice. The huge ice dragon let out a loud dragon roar and flapped its huge dragon wings. Its body was hundreds of feet long, and it quickly rushed towards the five-clawed silver dragon released by Lu Yuan. The five-clawed silver dragon and the ice dragon collided in the sky. Suddenly, an explosion sounded, and a huge energy fluctuation erupted. Lu Yuan's eyes lit up. The five-clawed silver dragon roared into the sky and shattered the ice dragon. Then, the five-clawed silver dragon rushed toward the ice goddess. The ice god was stunned when her attack was broken. The five-clawed silver dragon was already in front of her. Just as it was about to hit her, a huge golden halberd slashed down and shattered the five-clawed silver dragon's body. The golden halberd slowly shrunk, and a middle-aged man wearing a gorgeous blue divine outfit slowly appeared. See God. Seeing this figure, Lu Yuan frowned slightly. He gently swept his Dragon Emperor draining spring spear and sent a few gods flying. He then looked at the sea god indifferently. Thank you for saving me, sea goddess. The ice goddess heaved a sigh of relief when she saw the five-clawed silver dragon crumble. If it weren't for the sea god, she would have been severely injured by that attack. It's nothing. There's no need to thank me. The sea goddess shook her head. No, I still have to thank you. If it weren't for you, I would have been injured, the ice goddess said seriously. Then, she changed the topic and asked, but there's something I don't understand. We're both spear gods, and my attack is extremely spiritual. Why is it so fragile before his attack? The ice goddess was confused. Her attack was not weak, but why did it seem so fragile? It was because her attack collapsed too quickly that she could not react in time. As a result, she was almost heavily injured by Lu Yuan. Otherwise, she could have dodged it completely. The problem is that your attack is too spiritual. After the spear light transformed into the ice dragon, it's extremely lifelike. It even contains the might of a dragon. However, it's exactly because of this that you're suppressed by him. He's the myriad dragon sovereign. He's born to suppress all beasts, especially dragons. They have to prostrate themselves before him. Plus, his presence is comparable to a god king. His attack is very powerful. It's normal that you can't block it. So when you fight him, don't condense these things. The only way is to fight him head-on, the sea goddess said seriously. Is that so? The ice goddess opened her mouth slightly. She was shocked. She did not expect that she would lose so quickly because the ice dragon she condensed was too lifelike. This reason really left her speechless. Could she blame herself for condensing it too well? However, the ice goddess was not an ordinary person. She was dazed for a moment, before quickly returning to normal. She blinked her beautiful eyes slightly and paid attention to the scene. At this moment, Lu Yuan and the sea goddess were confronting each other. Lu Yuan stood where he was. He gently waved the Dragon Emperor draining spring spear in his hand and repelled the gods one by one. He even had the strength to look into the sea goddess' eyes. I didn't expect that our first meeting would be under such circumstances. The sea goddess stared at Lu Yuan and sighed. He had always thought highly of Lu Yuan. Even if Lu Yuan was unwilling to be his successor, he still gave him the 13 halberds of the sea god and the permanent use of the light of the sea god. It could be said that the sea god's appreciation of Lu Yuan was far above that of the Azura god. He did not expect that there would be a day when he would be enemies with someone he thought highly of on the battlefield. To be honest, the sea god's feelings were somewhat complicated. Actually, I wish that we didn't meet here. You shouldn't have come, Lu Yuan said faintly as he looked at the sea god. There's no such thing as shouldn't have come. I'm the sea god of the god realm. I have to come. You, on the other hand, have a bright future. Why do you have to go against the god realm and seek your own death? Turn back. As long as you're willing to turn back, I can plead with the god king and the others for you. With your talent, I believe the god king will give you a way out. The sea god tried her best to persuade him. Although Lu Yuan killed the earth god and the avarice god, Lu Yuan's value far exceeded theirs. As long as Lu Yuan was willing to submit, the sea god believed that the evil god and the good god would be willing to give Lu Yuan a chance and spare his life. Huh, do you think it's possible for me to turn back? Moreover, what did I do wrong? Why should I turn back? Lu Yuan chuckled. His double pupils flickered and his gaze became piercingly cold. Gu Yuna was his wife and she was pregnant with his child. How could he abandon her? Moreover, what did he do wrong? Shouldn't these despicable gods be killed? Shouldn't this rotten god realm be revolted? Most importantly, who were the evil god and the good god to make him beg for mercy? Back down. I don't want to kill you, Lu Yuan said faintly as the Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear flickered. It's my duty. I can't back down. The sea god sighed and gripped the sea god's trident tightly. Then don't blame me for being impolite, Lu Yuan murmured softly. His double pupils suddenly brightened, and his eyes were filled with ferocity. Chapter 1190. To be honest, he didn't want to fight with the sea god. However, in this special period, he was under a lot of pressure. The sea god was on the opposite side of him, so he had no choice but to fight. After all, although he had a good relationship with the sea god, he was willing to make everyone his enemy for Gu Yuna and the others, let alone the sea god. Moreover, didn't the sea god want to be his enemy too? The sea god wanted to fight him too. This was an unchangeable issue, and it had nothing to do with their friendship. So just bring it on. Let me see your current strength. The sea god sighed. Since he couldn't convince Lu Yuan, he would let him experience this prodigy strength. As you wish, I'll let you see my true strength. Lu Yuan shouted, and the aura on his body rose again. He stabbed out with the Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear. Suddenly, man and spear became one, and a terrifying power swept out. Come on, unpredictable storm. The trident in the sea god's hand spun gently, and a golden halo floated out and flew towards Lu Yuan. Unpredictable storm, the number 1 control type skill in the god realm. It was the most basic, practical, and mysterious move of the sea god's 13 halberds. When the sea god used it personally, its power was extraordinary. Halberd god. No wonder you're the number 1 person under the god king realm. Lu Yuan smiled. The sea god's cultivation was already at the half-step god-king realm, and with the sea god's trident and the halberd god realm, it was no wonder people said he was comparable to a god-king. Although his strength couldn't compare to a god-king who had just stepped into the god-king realm, it wasn't much weaker. The sea god's name was well-deserved. Although unpredictable storm is powerful, it's useless against me. Lu Yuan's second golden soul ring lit up, and his body was covered in a thick layer of golden light. His whole body was covered in golden scales, and even his figure grew a lot taller. His second soul skill, Golden Dragon War Body, granted him immunity to all control-type skills. This skill was the bane of unpredictable storm. Back in the Dragon Valley, when Lu Yuan had absorbed the half-step Divine King's Golden Dragon Soul Ring, he had also used some of his energy to evolve his soul rings. In addition to the boundless dragon power that he had extracted from the Dragon Valley, he had successfully evolved his first 6 soul rings into million-year soul rings, and his second soul skill had become many times more powerful than it had been in the past. Now, the Golden Dragon War Body could be considered a true divine skill. The halo formed by amorphous storm landed directly on Lu Yuan's body. Throughout the entire process, Lu Yuan did not resist at all. The sea goddess rejoiced when she saw this. However, before she could rejoice for too long, Lu Yuan's body trembled. The halo of unpredictable storm exploded, turning into golden specks of light. How is this possible? The sea god's eyes widened in disbelief. As long as the indefinite storm was hit, it would be established, and no one could break free from it. It had never failed in so many years, but today, Lu Yuan's performance had truly shocked him. The indefinite storm had actually been broken free. Courtesy demands reciprocation. It's my turn. Lu Yuan chuckled. Golden blood energy burst out from his body, and the Dragon Emperor Drain Spring Spear gathered golden light, and its power became even more tyrannical. Spear art, life's end. Lu Yuan locked his spear on the sea god and released a shocking blow. This self-created spear art was the result of the sublimation of his previous spear art, Life's Slaughter. It was extremely powerful, and it was a pure spear of slaughter. The Dragon Emperor Drain Spring Spear stabbed out quickly, and along the way, many gods retreated. No one dared to take this blow, because intuition told them that if they did, they would die. Terrifying and incomparably pure murderous intent enveloped the sea god, and that icy chill filled his heart. For the first time in his life, the feeling of death was so intense. If he could not take this blow, he might really die. He could feel that Lu Yuan had not held back in this attack. He had truly erupted with all his strength in his current state. This was a genuine divine king attack. Even the destruction god and the others would not dare to underestimate this attack. The sea god's eyes lit up, and the sea god's trident bloomed with brilliant light. Body and trident as one, stellar transposition. The sea god shouted, and directly launched the most powerful move of the sea god's 13 halberds. Golden light flashed, and the sea god's figure suddenly disappeared, leaving behind a sea god's trident that had become hundreds of feet long, floating in the air. The huge sea god's trident bloomed with brilliant light, and directly faced the Dragon Emperor Drain Spring Spear. Boom! The Dragon Emperor Drain Spring Spear and the sea god's trident collided directly. It was like a needle against an awl, and in an instant, endless energy burst out. The surrounding space collapsed inch by inch, and countless space fragments flew out in all directions. Creak! The Dragon Emperor Drain Spring Spear let out a loud dragon roar, and the huge sea god's trident trembled and let out a painful cry. Seeing this, the ice god's expression changed, and she directly joined the battle with the ice god's spear. Sea god, let me help you. Ice god's profound meaning, ice spirit divine spear. The ice god shouted, and the ice god's spear suddenly enlarged 100 times, and also hit the Dragon Emperor Drain Spring Spear. The sea god's trident and the ice god's spear responded to each other. At the same time, they put pressure on the Dragon Emperor Drain Spring Spear. The two were directly in a deadlock. When the other gods saw that Lu Yuan, the sea god, and the ice god were in a deadlock, they all raised their divine weapons and launched attacks at Lu Yuan. Knowing that Lu Yuan's body was tyrannical, they all aimed their attacks at the weak points of Lu Yuan's body, such as the temple on the top of his head or the lower part of his body. Lu Yuan's face darkened, and anger flashed in his double pupils, like a raging fire, crazily burning. "You're courting death," Lu Yuan shouted, and nine-colored light bloomed, and the dragon's roar resounded. Layers of extremely gorgeous armor began to appear on his body. When the attacks landed on the armor, sparks flew everywhere, but not even a scratch was left on it. Boom! A layer of shocking air waves erupted from Lu Yuan's body, and many gods were sent flying at the same time. Even the sea god and the ice god were sent flying. The sea god was directly hit out of the state of being one with the halberd, and blood spurted out of his mouth. The gorgeous nine-color divine armor completely wrapped Lu Yuan, and when the sun shone on the divine armor, it reflected a dazzling and luxurious nine-color divine light. This set of divine armor was gorgeous and luxurious to the extreme, and 9 dragons spiraled on the entire set of armor, emitting an incomparably noble aura. The 3 pairs of gorgeous 9-colored dragon wings on his back gently flapped, and endless energy surged. Lu Yuan held the Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear in his hand, and he stood in the air, looking mighty and handsome, like a true supreme ruler, and all things in the world prostrated themselves at his feet. With the divine armor on his body, Lu Yuan's aura skyrocketed again, and a terrifying pressure swept across the entire place. The 5 great divine kings looked solemn, and many gods were trembling, looking at Lu Yuan with eyes full of fear and reverence. Chapter 1191. What a terrifying aura! What kind of godly equipment is this? The evil God King and the others frowned. After Lu Yuan's 9-colored godly equipment appeared, his aura had increased rapidly. If Lu Yuan's aura had just entered the God King threshold before, then this godly equipment had become much more powerful. Lu Yuan's aura was comparable to the God of Destructions. Lu Yuan's aura was no weaker than the God of Destructions. Coupled with Lu Yuan's terrifying body, his combat power had risen to a terrifying level. Life, hurry up. The evil God King had a bad premonition. The current Lu Yuan was extremely terrifying. If they didn't hurry up and recover from their injuries, the sea god and the others would suffer an incomparably huge loss. Yes, the god of life's expression was also serious. Lu Yuan's strength had truly shocked her once again. This young man's growth was too fast. With a thought, the divine power in her body quickly circulated. Pure life energy surged into the bodies of the 2 god kings, healing their injuries as quickly as possible. Is this Obuchi's godly equipment? It's so powerful and cool. Chihiro Snow blinked her beautiful eyes, looking at the extraordinarily handsome Lu Yuan in the 9-colored godly equipment. A look of infatuation flashed through her eyes. Lu Yuan was becoming more and more outstanding, and more likable. I have to say, Obuchi looks really handsome in this godly equipment. Bibidan's red lips parted slightly, her voice crisp and pleasant. The corners of her lips curled up slightly, and a beautiful smile appeared on her face. Such a handsome and powerful Lu Yuan. She really liked Lu Yuan. Her man was just that outstanding. Bibidan thought to herself, a look of pride flashing through her eyes. Of course, his godly equipment is outstanding. It's the only super divine equipment in the world right now. It's extremely powerful. With this set of godly equipment, even gods with super divine equipment would find it difficult to break through his defenses. Dealing with these people would be as easy as blowing off dust. It's just that you only see the brilliance of the godly equipment. You don't know how much he suffered for it. Even now, my heart aches when I think about it, Guyuna said softly. Guyuna said softly, and a trace of pity flashed through her purple eyes. Her emotions were surging. Oh, what happened back then? Chihiro Snow and Bibidan couldn't help but asked hurriedly when they heard Gu Yuna's words. It's like this. Gu Yuna paused, then slowly told Bibi Don and Chihiro Snow about how Lu Yuan had condensed his godly equipment. As Gu Yuna spoke, Bibi Dong and Qianren Shue slowly frowned. They couldn't help but feel distressed. In midair, Lu Yuan was wearing a gorgeous 9-colored godly equipment. The Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear in his hand emitted a bright golden light. From time to time, dragon roars could be heard. Lu Yuan's eyes flashed with raging anger. His gaze was cold and piercing, exuding a cold, murderous intent. Originally, I wanted to play with you, but now it seems that there's no need for that. All of you go to hell. Lu Yuan looked at the gods in disgust. A terrifying divine power burst out in an instant. His figure flashed, and his speed reached the extreme. In just a moment, he approached a god. The Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear in his hand directly smashed towards the god. Pride, be careful. Seeing this scene, the god of lust hurriedly shouted and rushed in the direction of the god of pride. Let's go too. Otherwise, sooner or later, we'll be broken through one by one, the water god said and hurriedly went forward to support. The other gods nodded and began to rush to the rescue. The strength that Lu Yuan showed really scared them. They were also afraid of death. Lu Yuan completely ignored the god of lust and the others rushing to the rescue. The Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear emitted a terrifying, murderous intent and directly locked onto the god of pride. I'll fight you to the death. Seeing that Lu Yuan would rather take the attacks of many gods head-on to kill him, the god of pride suddenly exploded. The divine power in his whole body surged crazily. It poured into the divine sword in his hand as if it didn't want his life. It turned into a powerful attack and directly attacked Lu Yuan. Even an ordinary god king had to be careful to deal with the life-risking attack of a first-level god to avoid injury. But for Lu Yuan, it was far from enough. Trash, go to hell. The Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear carried Lu Yuan's unparalleled strength and directly hit the divine sword in the hands of the god of pride. In an instant, the divine sword of the master god level exploded directly. The Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear directly hit the body of the god of pride, turning him into a bloody mist. There was no corpse left, only a shiny crystal spinning in the air. Lu Yuan quickly took the godhood of the god of pride and poured all the divine power in his body into the continent under his feet. He said that he would take one part of the origin and return 10 parts. These fallen gods were Lu Yuan's return gift. After receiving the infusion of the divine power of the god of pride, the will of heaven and earth of the Douluo world trembled slightly and expressed its joy in Lu Yuan's ears. It seems that you like it very much. Then let's kill a few more. Lu Yuan smiled slightly, his eyes overflowing with murderous intent. Next, it's your turn. Lu Yuan's eyes flickered and stared at a figure. This was a god dressed in dark divine armor. This guy was extremely sinister, and Lu Yuan had already remembered him. The Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear radiated light in all directions, and a terrifying, murderous intent swept over and rushed straight towards this god. Attacks fell on Lu Yuan's body and were directly bounced off. They couldn't stop Lu Yuan at all. God of darkness, be careful. Lu Yuan, that's enough. The sea god waved his trident and attacked Lu Yuan. Beside him, the ice god also stabbed with his spear. The ice god's spear was cold and sharp. Enough? This is far from enough. Get out of my way, Lu Yuan shouted. Golden blood energy burst forth, and the 9-colored divine armor bloomed. The Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear directly hit the sea god's trident and the ice god's spear. The irresistible, terrifying power directly collapsed the sea god's trident and the ice god's spear, and even the bodies of the two were directly sent flying. The terrifying power made them vomit blood. Although Lu Yuan's aura was only comparable to the god of destruction, his attack power was stronger than the god of evil. Strong defense, strong attack, and great strength. Lu Yuan, who was wearing 9-colored divine armor, was equivalent to an upgraded version of the Golden Dragon King. Want to escape? Do you think you can escape? Space imprisonment. Lu Yuan stretched out his hand and grabbed. The space suddenly froze, and the figure of the god of darkness suddenly stopped in place. The Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear flew out and directly penetrated the god of darkness. The god of darkness, one of the 7 elemental gods, had fallen. Chapter 1192. Darkness. The god of darkness. Many gods couldn't help but exclaim at the same time. The god of darkness, who had been pierced by the Dragon Emperor Draining spring spear, slowly closed his eyes as blood flowed from his mouth. Lu Yuan's sure kill attack had directly ended his life. You asked for it. Lu Yuan's eyes were indifferent. With a slight tremble, the god of darkness's corpse immediately collapsed, and a black crystal fell into Lu Yuan's hand. It was the god of darkness's godhead, and all the divine power in the god of darkness's body was injected into the continent below under Lu Yuan's control. The god of darkness completely disappeared from the mortal world. However, just as Lu Yuan said, he had asked for it. His sneaky attack on Gu Yuna's nether regions and his despicable methods against her had already doomed him to death. It's your turn now. Anyone who made a move against Na or won't be able to escape today. Space-time slash. Lu Yuan said softly. The Dragon Emperor Draining spring spear drew a strange trajectory, directly splitting the heaven and earth with him as the center, forming a huge arena. It could also be said that he had separated this heaven and earth. As long as Lu Yuan didn't die, no one would be able to leave this heaven and earth. Even the spatial god, who was proficient in the power of space, couldn't leave this heaven and earth. This wasn't the power of space alone, but the power of space-time. It was like a separate small world, and the flow of time between heaven and earth was completely different from the outside world. It was similar to the state of the Dragon Valley. However, unlike the Dragon Valley, this heaven and earth was temporarily created by Lu Yuan. As long as Lu Yuan withdrew, it would immediately disappear. Moreover, the surroundings were filled with space-time barriers. Unless one was proficient in the way of space-time, if one wanted to leave, the only way left was to defeat Lu Yuan. Coincidentally, when Lu Yuan separated this heaven and earth, Di Tian and the other soul beasts just happened to arrive and were blocked outside. Why are Di Tian and the others here? Forget it. Their strength is too low. They will only be a hindrance if they come in. Let them wait outside. Although this world was divided, it didn't block vision. The people inside could see outside, and the people outside could see inside. It's just that the people outside couldn't come in, and the people inside couldn't go out. This is directly severing this world. Since when did Obuchi control the power of time? It also fused with time and space, giving birth to space-time power. Lu Yuan's actions shocked everyone present. Even Gu Yuna and the other two opened their mouths in disbelief. They knew that Lu Yuan controlled the power of space, but they didn't know when Lu Yuan comprehended the power of time. This was because Lu Yuan didn't show any signs of it. When did Obuchi comprehend the power of time? Why don't I know anything about it? Chihiro Snow's golden eyes flashed. He could not help but whisper. I don't know either. Guyuna shook her head. She had never sensed this before. The power of space was profound, but the power of time was even more enigmatic. There were very few people who could comprehend one of them. Lu Yuan was the first person she knew who could comprehend both at the same time. Do you know? Chihiro Snow looked at BB Don and asked softly. I don't know. When he's with me, he rarely talks about his cultivation. BB Don shook her head gently. When Lu Yuan was with her, he basically only cared about her matters. On the other hand, he rarely talked about his own matters. Basically, he would only make her happy and not make her feel annoyed. Now that I think about it, that does seem to be the case. When he's with me, he basically only thinks about my matters. Unless I ask him, he won't talk about his cultivation. Chihiro Snow agreed. Lu Yuan's help to her cultivation could be said to be great, but she seemed to have never helped Lu Yuan with his problems. He's like this. He likes to hide a lot of things in his heart, and from time to time, he always surprises us. Gu Yuna's eyes flashed. She stared at Lu Yuan, tenderness flashing in her eyes. Sometimes, I really want to know how much ability this man of ours has hidden, Gu Yuna said softly. Gu Yuna said softly with a smile on her face. Watching Lu Yuan avenge her really made her feel happy and full of happiness. We also want to know. Chihiro Snow and BB Don looked at each other and smiled. Lu Yuan was like an inexhaustible treasure. From time to time, he could surprise people. They really liked him more and more. If Chihiro Snow and the others were surprised by Lu Yuan's control of the power of time, then the remaining gods were completely horrified. With Lu Yuan's move, they didn't even have the chance to escape. They could only watch death slowly come. Next, it will be a very beautiful killing feast. Everyone, welcome your death. Lu Yuan smiled softly, his eyes overflowing with killing intent. Since he traveled back in time to save BB Dawn, he was lucky enough to comprehend the power of time, but it was not until now that he put it to use. Sure enough, when he used it this time, everyone was shocked. The gods couldn't have a chance to escape anymore. He could kill to his heart's content. The Dragon Emperor Drain's spring spear buzzed softly, and a terrifying and pure killing intent swept in all directions. Many first-level gods trembled slightly, and then one by one, they clenched the divine weapons in their hands. At this point, they had no way out. They could only fight to the death. You demon, go to hell. The light god flew out directly, waving his staff that contained pure light. Balls of light flew quickly toward Lu Yuan. Let's go too. The sloth god shouted softly and also rushed forward. Many first-level gods burst forth with all their strength at the same time, activating their life-risking skills. Water god. The fire god, who was seriously injured, grabbed the water god and glanced in Gu Yuna's direction. We still have one last chance to live. The fire god's eyes flickered as he said faintly. The water god instantly understood her husband's meaning. Looking at Gu Yuna and Chihiro Snow, her eyes were fierce. Let's go. The two gods rushed forward at the same time. Rather than be killed by the monster Lu Yuan, it was better to take Gu Yuna down. That way, they would have a chance to live. As for Chihiro Snow, he was also a first-level god. Now, the two of them no longer had any scruples. No matter how difficult Chihiro Snow was to deal with, he was far inferior to Lu Yuan. Moreover, the two of them attacked together. One of them could block Chihiro Snow, and the other could directly seize Gu Yuna. At that time, the crisis would be resolved. I knew you people wouldn't be honest. Chihiro Snow's eyes narrowed, and the angelic sacred sword released a terrifying power, slashing toward the two gods. Chapter 1193. To possess the strength of a Tier 1 god, even before entering the firmament. Brat, you're very talented, but you're still too inexperienced. The water god sneered as she swung the water god staff in her hand toward Chihiro Snow. Is that so? Chihiro Snow sneered. Golden flames burst forth from the angelic sword, and the holy energy of light surged toward the water god. Boom! The two attacks collided, creating shockwaves that sent both of them flying backward. Fire God seized the opportunity to charge toward Gu Yuna. Even though he was severely injured, dealing with a semi-divinity realm cultivator like BB Dawn and a powerless Gu Yuna was still a walk in the park. Gu Yuna, surrender. The fire god brandished his fire god sword and slashed at her. Do you really think that such despicable means will work? Gu Yuna stood on the spot, her eyes as calm as still water. There wasn't the slightest hint of panic on her face. Lu Yuan was standing right where he was, so how could he possibly allow her to get hurt? She trusted Lu Yuan more than she trusted herself. Lu Yuan is surrounded right now. He can't even spare a hand. How can he save you? Don't try to scare me. I, Fire God, am not one to be scared. Fire God sneered as the flames on his Fire God sword surged. Idiot. BB Dong's pink eyes blinked, and a trace of disdain flashed across his face as he spat out these two words. Fire God's heart trembled when he saw the disdain in Bibidon's eyes. A bad premonition welled up in his heart. Vulcan could not help but raise his head slightly. He felt his vision darken as a fist the size of a small house smashed into his head. Vulcan's body was sent flying like a rubber ball. Roar! I hit you! I hit you! A boorish voice sounded, and a massive ape that was over 100 meters tall stood in front of Guyuna. It raised its head to the sky and roared with joy in its voice. Its body was exceptionally sturdy, and it stood there like a towering mountain. This was one of Lu Yuan's 4 spirits, the Titan giant ape. After Lu Yuan's strength had improved and he had entered the godly realm, his 4 spirit souls had also benefited greatly. Even the Titan giant ape was now a true god-tier spirit soul. The Titan giant ape had great strength to begin with, and Vulcan was not prepared for this punch at all. He was really caught off guard, and his whole person was stunned. Little monkey, you've done well this time. You're quite accurate. A mocking voice rang out, and a fiery red dragon that was hundreds of feet long appeared, blocking the fire god's path. Its long tail swung at the fire god's body, sending him flying back. Even though they were both spirit souls, the Flame Dragon King was far more powerful than the Titan giant ape. Even though he hadn't fully recovered his peak strength, he was still a first-tier celestial. His attack shook the Flame Dragon King's internal organs, and he coughed up blood. Good timing. The fire god's body shot back like a rubber ball. Next to the Titan giant ape, an icy blue dragon that was hundreds of feet long appeared, and a biting cold aura emanated from it. It raised its enormous claws and slammed them into the fire god's body. The fire god howled in agony as his divine armor shattered. The Water Dragon King's kick had taught him the meaning of a peach blossom. Fire god. Hearing fire god screams, Water god couldn't help but become anxious and shouted loudly. You still have the time to care about others? Eat my sword. Chihiro Snow's angelic sword slashed down, carrying with it an incomparably sharp sword intent. That's right. This madam is right. You still have the time to care about others? Just as the water god was about to block Chihiro Snow's attack, a deep and domineering voice rang out. A yellow dragon that was even larger than the Fire Dragon King and the Water Dragon King appeared and slapped the water god. The water god wanted to dodge, but it was too late. The huge palm slammed into her body, and her divine armor shattered. Her body shot back, blood seeping out her nose and mouth. Boom! The fire god's body flew over and collided with the water god. Both husband and wife were bleeding profusely. The Fire Dragon King, the Water Dragon King, the Mountain Dragon King, and the Titan Giant Ape surrounded the two of them. Aren't you all dead? How can you appear again? And why didn't we notice at all? The fire god struggled with his broken body, looking at the Fire Dragon King and the others with eyes full of unwillingness. If it weren't for them, his plan would have succeeded. But now that they appeared, everything was over. We are indeed dead, but we have our master. It was our master who gave us a chance to come back to life. As for us suddenly appearing again, the Mountain Dragon King chuckled coldly. We didn't suddenly appear. We've always been there. We were just hiding in space. You're lying. You don't have the ability to control space. The fire god yelled in agitation. He was like a gambler who had lost everything. We don't have the ability to control space, but our master does. In terms of control over the power of space, our master is unparalleled. The Mountain Dragon King's voice was filled with reverence and reverence. So you can rest in peace. Fire Dragon King, Ice Dragon King, send them on their way. The Mountain Dragon King spoke softly. All right, we can't wait any longer. The Fire Dragon King and Water Dragon King smiled in unison. Scorching flames and extreme frost enveloped the fire god and the water god. The two of them let loose blood-curdling screams, and their auras became weaker and weaker until they completely disappeared. The fire god had died from scorching flames, and the water god had died from extreme frost. It had to be said that this was a blatant irony. Take out their godhoods. Our master needs them. The Mountain Dragon King said. Yes. The Fire and Water Dragon Kings nodded in unison. They stowed away the godhoods of the Water God and the Fire God, and their divine power completely fused with heaven and earth, becoming nourishment for the Douluo continent. Water God, Fire God. The Azura God howled in agony. The evil God King and the others' expressions changed drastically. The deaths of the Water God and the Fire God had shaken them, but the appearance of the Mountain Dragon King and Water Dragon King was even more astonishing. They had all fallen, but now they had been resurrected. This was far too terrifying. Killing intent welled up in their hearts once again. This was all because of Lu Yuan. If Lu Yuan didn't die, the divine realm would never be at peace. The Azura God threw his head back and roared with fury. If they wanted to deal with Lu Yuan, they had to defeat Lucifer as quickly as possible. Otherwise, by the time they escaped, all of the remaining gods would be dead. Well done. A pleased smile appeared on Lu Yuan's face at the sight of the four soul spirits. He had always planned before taking action. So how could Chihiro Snow be the only one left to protect Guyuna? Chapter 1194. One had to know that Guyuna was pregnant with his child. This was his only bloodline, so he attached great importance to it. Knowing that there were so many first-level gods present, the protection he left behind naturally couldn't be weak. Chihiro Snow was only protecting her on the surface to attract attention and lower the vigilance of those gods. The real protection was the four spirits that had always been with him. When he was healing Guyuna and hugging her, he had already quietly hidden the four spirits beside her. With his control of space, it was easy for him not to be discovered by those gods. What he had said and how he insisted on holding Guyuna in his arms to fight were all just to confuse the gods. Later, when Chihiro Snow came, he changed his plan and conveniently let Chihiro Snow protect her on the surface while the four spirits secretly protected her. This way, it became more secure. The result was as Lu Yuan expected. The Water God and the Fire God were killed as soon as they made a move. This arrangement was really wonderful. Lu Yuan wasn't a barbarian who only knew how to fight. His mind was also very flexible. Sometimes, wisdom was also an extremely powerful force. With the deterrence of the attack just now, the help of the four spirits, and Chihiro Snow with a sword at the side, he believed that Guyuna was now as stable as Mount Tai. No god would dare to have any ideas about her. Guyuna's safety was no longer threatened, so he could naturally fight with more ease. The Dragon Emperor draining spring spear directly pierced into the body of the God of Light, and her life force quickly dissipated. The God of Light stared fiercely at Lu Yuan, her eyes full of resentment. Don't blame me. You asked for it. I don't like to kill people, but you insisted on courting death. It has nothing to do with me. Facing the God of Light's resentful gaze, Lu Yuan's eyes were indifferent, and there wasn't the slightest ripple in his heart. Although the God of Light was a woman, and a very beautiful one at that, since she attacked Guyuna, then Lu Yuan wouldn't hesitate to kill her without any mercy. I curse you. You will not have a good ending. You will die miserably. The God of Light's beautiful face was full of ferocity as she spat out a vicious curse. Even if I die a horrible death, you won't be able to see it. Lu Yuan lightly shook, and the Dragon Emperor draining spring spear directly disintegrated the Light God's body. Lu Yuan took a godhead, and the Light God's divine power poured into the mainland. After that, he brandished the Dragon Emperor draining spring spear and continued his massacre. One by one, the godly spirits fell at his hands. He killed until blood splattered everywhere. Heaven and earth lost their color. Shura deity and the others were so angry that their eyes were about to split open. Their eyes surged with a blood-red color. On the contrary, Tion and the others in the outside world felt their blood boiling. Guyuna's eyes were filled with tears, and her face was filled with gratification and happiness. Lu Yuan shattered the God of Wrath with a single spear and took his godhead. His indifferent gaze swept across the four people in front of him. They were the only four remaining gods. They were the sea god, ice god, wind god, and space god. The first two were merciful because Lu Yuan had shown mercy. The last two were fast and had powerful life-saving methods. Otherwise, they wouldn't have escaped the fate of death. However, although the four of them were still alive, they were all seriously injured. Lu Yuan's attack was not to be underestimated. Even a god king would find it hard to resist, let alone a few first-tier gods. Even if the sea god was said to be comparable to a god king, it was useless. If one wasn't a god king, they wouldn't even have the qualifications to survive under Lu Yuan's spear. Those first-tier gods that died before were the best proof. Sea god, do you still want to continue fighting? On account of our previous friendship, I will advise you again. Quickly retreat. I don't want to kill you. Lu Yuan pointed his spear horizontally and said indifferently. He wasn't someone who didn't care about old friendships. The sea god didn't attack Gu Yuna and gave him the right to use the 13 halberds of the sea god and the light of the sea god. He really didn't want to kill the sea god. Besides, even without these, he would have spared the sea god's life for the sake of Pasizi. After all, he didn't want to see the Pasizi sad. She had worshipped the sea god all her life. If she suddenly heard that the sea god was dead, it would be hard for her to accept. This was the woman he had reserved. He loved her in his heart and didn't want to see her cry. Therefore, he was willing to advise the sea god again. Otherwise, with his personality, he would never be long-winded a second time. Thank you for your kindness. Sorry, I'm a part of the god realm. I can't leave the god realm. The sea god shook her head and rejected Lu Yuan's suggestion once again. What about you? You are a rare heroine. As long as you are willing to retreat, I can let you go. Lu Yuan looked at the ice god. A female god who had comprehended the spear god realm was too rare. He didn't want to kill such an existence. Thank you, but I don't need it. I can die, but I won't abandon the god realm. The ice god clenched the ice god's spear in her hand. Her voice was as firm as iron. You two are really stubborn. Forget it. I won't be merciful from now on. You two are on your own now. Good luck. Lu Yuan said softly. The Dragon Emperor, draining spring spear in his hand, disappeared. A pitch-black spear that flickered with blood-red light appeared. In an instant, an endless baleful aura filled the entire world. When this spear appeared, many divine weapons buzzed and emitted a sense of fear. The ice god's spear in the ice god's hand trembled violently. It actually broke free from the ice god's control and worshipped the god-slaying spear. The god-slaying spear, the supreme spear among spears. It was the strongest spear among all the spears. Facing the god-slaying spear, all spear-type weapons would submit completely. Although Lu Yuan's god-slaying spear was only a martial soul, this was only the Douluo continent. The ice god spear was only a super divine weapon. Seeing the ice god spear's actions, the ice god's expression changed drastically. The ice god spear that she was so proud of actually worshipped Lu Yuan's god-slaying spear. It completely submitted to it and didn't even listen to her orders. This was the first time such an action had happened in so many years. The ice god's spear automatically worshipped. The sea god's trident wasn't much better. It trembled violently. Even the sea god felt that it was a little unstable. It seems like your super divine weapons want to betray me. That's great. It would be impolite for me to refuse. Lu Yuan smiled faintly. He stretched out his hand, and the sea god's trident trembled even more violently. It actually broke free from the sea god's control and landed in Lu Yuan's hand. Lu Yuan casually gestured twice. The corner of his mouth curled into a smile. The sea god's trident. It's a pretty good weapon. I'll take it first. Lu Yuan patted it gently. The sea god's trident turned into a streak of golden light and entered Lu Yuan's body. The sea god was dumbfounded. She was in disbelief. Chapter 1195. The sea god's mouth was wide open in shock. The sea god's trident was his weapon, but not only did it not resist Lu Yuan, but it was also subdued by Lu Yuan. How is this possible? This was a super divine weapon, and it was a super divine weapon that he had personally nurtured. How could it be taken by Lu Yuan just like that? The ice god was also shocked. She quickly grabbed the ice god's spear and forcefully used her divine power to suppress the vibration of the ice god's spear. She was afraid that her weapon would be taken away by Lu Yuan. Seeing the ice god's actions, Lu Yuan was dumbfounded. It seemed that the ice god was shocked by him subduing the sea god's trident. However, the sea god's trident and the ice god's spear were completely different. The ice god's spear was only a tribute to the god-killing spear, but the sea god's trident had truly become his weapon. You seem very surprised. Lu Yuan smiled faintly and glanced at the sea god as he spoke softly. How did you do it? The sea goddess asked softly as she took a deep breath and forced herself to calm down. He stared at Lu Yuan. He really wanted to know about this matter. He could feel that the sea god's trident was originally vibrating out of fear. However, the moment Lu Yuan waved his hand, he felt that the connection between him and the sea god's trident was slowly weakening until it completely disappeared. In other words, the sea god's trident really had nothing to do with him. His super divine weapon had completely betrayed him and became Lu Yuan's. Therefore, he was very concerned. He wanted to know what was going on. It seems that you really want to know. All right, since we are friends, I will reluctantly tell you. I have an ability, and that is anything I touch will belong to me from the moment I touch it. For example, this. Lu Yuan's left hand flashed, and the blood-red Shura sacred sword appeared, exuding a terrifying and pure murderous aura. The Shura sacred sword is now mine. How is it? The Shura god couldn't summon it away, right? Lu Yuan smiled faintly. The Shura god's face immediately darkened. He was afraid that he would not be able to get away with this embarrassing matter. Seeing the Shura god's darkened face, Lucifer couldn't help but laugh. The Shura god was so embarrassed. This kid was becoming more and more pleasing to the eye. Impossible. You may have touched the Shura's sacred sword, but you have never used the sea god's trident. How can you control it? The sea god fiercely retorted. He felt that he had discovered a loophole. Have you forgotten about the sea god's heart? I've spent a long time on this, Lu Yuan said softly. God's sword? Poseidon was stunned. Lu Yuan had never touched Poseidon's trident before, but he had touched Poseidon's heart, which was the core of Poseidon's trident. He could control the sea god's trident through the sea god's heart. Impressive. You've been scheming for the sea god's trident since the beginning, right? Pasisi's invitation to the sea god's island was exactly what you wanted. The sea god sighed. It's a super divine tool. Who wouldn't want it? Besides, I was going to leave it for my own people. I guess you waited for Zhu Qing to pass the 7th test before forcefully summoning Poseidon's trident. Perhaps she's still in a daze. Since she passed the 7th test, Poseidon's trident is hers. I have to return it to her. Lu Yuan said warmly. The sea god rolled his eyes. The sea god's trident is mine. I haven't said I'm going to give it to her. It's mine now that it's in my hands. I can give it to whoever I want. Besides, aren't you going to retire? What do you want it for? Lu Yuan smiled faintly. The sea god, you're really shameless. The sea god couldn't help but scold him. No, I'm not being shameless. I snatched it with my own abilities. Lu Yuan kept his Azura holy sword and retracted his teasing expression. The god-slaying spear exuded a cold, killing intent. The blood gold, earth gold, and bright gold soul rings circled around it and shone brightly. This spear is called the god-slaying spear. What do you think? It's not bad, right? Lu Yuan asked. His voice was cold. The ice god's eyes became alert. She couldn't help but tighten her grip on the ice god's spear. She asked, what do you want? As she asked, she stared at the god-slaying spear in Lu Yuan's hand. This spear was too ferocious. She felt like she was going to die just by looking at it. That terrifying, murderous aura and fiendish aura made her heart tremble involuntarily. She was famous for being fearless. Are you afraid? Lu Yuan smiled and asked. I'm not. The ice god shook her head and denied it. She was the ice god. She wasn't afraid. Stubborn. Lu Yuan smiled and caressed the god-slaying spear gently. He continued, This spear is so good, but it only has 3 soul rings. It's a pity. He picked up the god-slaying spear gently and said, "What I want to do now is to fill up my soul rings. I'm thinking that since godly beasts and soul beasts can produce soul rings, God should be able to too." After he finished speaking, Lu Yuan's eyes turned sharp. The god-slaying spear in his hand locked onto the wind god. Lu Yuan moved and stabbed the god-slaying spear. Lu Yuan stopped. The sea god was shocked and pounced forward. Without the sea god's trident, the sea god's strength was greatly reduced. She was kicked away by Lu Yuan. The ice god pursed her lips and suppressed the fear in her heart. She stabbed her spear at Lu Yuan. Lu Yuan held the ice god's spear with his left hand, and the power of rules spread quickly. "Thank you for giving me equipment so eagerly. Let go." Lu Yuan shook his left hand. The ice god's hands went numb, and the ice god's spear fell out of her hands. Lu Yuan swung the ice god's spear gently. The handle of the ice god's spear swept across the ice god's body and sent her flying. Although Lu Yuan held back some strength, the ice god was definitely injured. She wouldn't be able to participate in the battle anymore. "Die!" Lu Yuan held the god-slaying spear and stabbed it down. "No!" The wind god let out a mournful wail and turned into ashes under the god-slaying spear. After being locked onto by the god-slaying spear, no matter how fast he was, he couldn't escape. "It's your turn." Lu Yuan quickly turned around. The god-slaying spear left his hand and hit the space god who was escaping, ending his life. Lu Yuan reached out, and the god-slaying spear flew into his hand. He also kept the 2 godheads. "Power of rules, condense for me." White light flickered. The power of the space god and the wind god surged and condensed on the god-slaying spear. They turned into 2 silver gold and green gold soul rings. In this way, the god-slaying spear was hung with 5 soul rings. The next 4 empty spots are left for you. Lu Yuan's aura surged. The murderous intent of the god-slaying spear engulfed the few god kings. His clear but cold voice resonated in the sky. Chapter 1196. Killing a god as a ring was something that had never been done before. Lu Yuan's actions had completely stunned everyone. How could Obuchi do that? Chihiro Snow covered his mouth, his golden eyes full of shock. Killing a god was fine, but using a god as a soul ring was not good. Right? What's wrong with him? Did he do something wrong? Gu Yuna asked softly, her purple eyes filled with joy. She was very satisfied with Lu Yuan's actions, from the bottom of her heart. Actually, it's not a big deal. He just killed a god as a soul ring. BB Don was rather calm. Anyway, he was going to kill a god, so using it as a soul ring was just recycling trash. It's not a big deal? Don't you think this goes against the natural order? This is not the right way. Chihiro Snow retorted. How is it not the right way? Can you only kill soul beasts as soul rings? Can't you kill a god as a soul ring? Only the officials are allowed to set fires, but the common people are not allowed to light lamps? Gu Yuna's beautiful eyes turned cold as she looked at Chihiro Snow. That's not what I meant. All right, stop arguing. Obuchi has his reasons for doing this. Don't you know what kind of person he is? Does he look like someone who walks the wrong way? He's only doing this to help Gu Yuna and the soul beasts vent their anger. Cher, you have to understand him. Bibi Dong blinked her pink eyes. She had seen through it all. Gathering the soul rings was only one aspect of it. What Lu Yuan wanted was to vent the anger in his heart. Someone had to pay for Gu Yuna's suffering, and someone had to pay for the many soul beasts that died because of the abnormal cultivation rules. Who was the one behind the cultivation rules of killing soul beasts to obtain soul rings? It was the gods of the god realm, the 5 godly kings of the god realm. Since they did these things, they had to pay the price. After all, everyone had to be responsible for their own actions. As one of the rulers of soul beasts, Lu Yuan had the golden dragon's bloodline flowing through his veins. He had to shoulder his responsibilities, and everything he was doing now was his responsibility. He was fulfilling his responsibility as a husband, and also as a leader of the soul beasts. It was precisely because BB Don could see this that she understood Lu Yuan very well and supported him unwaveringly. I know. I was just worried that Obuchi had gone astray. I didn't think so much. After hearing Bibidon's words, Chihiro Snow lowered her voice. After all, she wasn't a soul beast. Even though she wasn't a pure human, she was still used to looking at things from a human's point of view. She couldn't help but feel a little uncomfortable when she saw the Killer God's ring. This was human nature. Moreover, she was genuinely worried about Lu Yuan and was genuinely concerned about him. I know. Although you've matured a lot, you're still young and your thoughts aren't deep enough. I understand, but don't worry. Take it slow. You still have time. BB Don patted Chihiro Snow's shoulder and said gently. Chihiro Snow nodded slightly, and her expression became much better. No wonder you're the main wife. Obuchi's judgment is correct. Guyuna looked at BB Don with admiration. From this moment on, she truly recognized Bibidon's identity as the main wife. BB Don was mature, wise, and able to see the big picture. She could see the essence of things easily. Furthermore, she understood Lu Yuan very well. Guyuna asked herself if she could do better than BB Don. As for Chihiro Snow, she was still lacking in experience. She still needed to learn. After all, Chihiro Snow was only 28 years old. For the Douluo continent, where cultivation was allowed, 28 years old was really too young. The age limit for the Continental Elite Soul Master Tournament was 25 years old. Chihiro Snow was intelligent, but her age limited her vision. Not everyone was like Lu Yuan, who had 2 lifetimes of experience. Thank you. I still have a lot of shortcomings, and I still need your help. BB Don smiled gently and said softly, You're too modest. You've already done very well. Guyuna said gently. The two of them chatted and laughed. Chihiro Snow opened her eyes wide and looked at them in confusion. Weren't they talking about Obuchi? Why were they complimenting each other? However, their relationship seemed to be getting better and better. Was this Bibidon's ability? Chihiro Snow looked at BB Don and then at Lu Yuan. She had to admit that she wasn't as good as BB Don when it came to building relationships with people. She could also treat people peacefully. For example, when she was pretending to be Xue Qinghe, she was famous for being polite to the wise. However, that was just an act. It was all to make use of people. She might not have liked those people in her heart. However, BB Don could really get along with people as equals. This was something she couldn't compare to. In the end, it was the inexplicable arrogance of an angel that caused trouble. Sigh. Chihiro Snow sighed. It was still a little difficult for her to take the initiative to put down her arrogance and get along with others as equals. Forget it. I'm not the main wife anyway. Why should I care about this? There's nothing wrong with being arrogant. I'm arrogant. As long as Obuchi likes me, it's fine. Chihiro Snow muttered. Her beautiful eyes looked at Lu Yuan, who was wearing 9-colored god armor and holding the god-killing spear. She was gradually mesmerized. It's your turn. Lu Yuan held the god-killing spear and walked toward the 5 divine kings. With every step he took, the murderous intent on his body became more intense. The terrifying murderous intent made the 5 divine kings frown. This murderous intent was too frightening. Even they felt a chill in their hearts. Lu Yuan's murderous intent engulfed the entire place. The huge pressure made the destruction god and Azura god stop at the same time. Now, the one they needed to deal with the most was not Lucifer, but Lu Yuan. The terrifying pressure that Lu Yuan brought to them was even greater than that of the dragon god. Although Lucifer was a big threat compared to Lu Yuan, he was on a completely different level. Moreover, Lu Yuan had single-handedly killed 14 first-level gods, excluding the sea god and the ice god. Those 14 first-level gods were the subordinates of the Azura god and the destruction god. The two of them really hated Lu Yuan to the core, especially when Lu Yuan used the god-killing spear at the end and directly announced that the last 4 empty spots were reserved for them. Who could tolerate this kind of provocation? Their anger had already reached an extreme. Today, even if they didn't talk about Lucifer, they still wanted to kill Lu Yuan completely. If this person didn't die, it would be difficult to resolve the hatred in their hearts. The evil and kind divine king stood up at the same time. Their injuries were completely healed at this moment. In other words, Lu Yuan was going to face the 5 divine kings of the god realm at the same time. The 5 divine kings gathered together, and a terrifying pressure swept toward Lu Yuan. Chapter 1197. With the 5 divine kings gathered together, the huge pressure coming from them seemed to have solidified. If that terrifying pressure was placed on a first-tier divine king, it would probably be enough to crush him to pieces. Gu Yuna's expression also became serious. She looked in the direction of Lu Yuan, secretly worried for Lu Yuan. Once the 5 divine kings gathered together, the strength they could unleash when cooperating with each other would definitely not be a simple sum of 5. It would be at least 10 or even 20 or 30. Their strength would be greatly increased. If it were not for that, the dragon god would not have been defeated by them, given his strength back then. One had to know that the dragon god had gathered a terrifying physical body and controlled all elements. Its strength was definitely at the peak of the divine king realm. It was even half a step away from the divine king realm. It was also because of this that its 2 main clones, the golden dragon king and the silver dragon king, could reach the threshold of the divine king realm. However, even so, the dragon god was still defeated back then. It was because the 5 divine kings had a tacit understanding and could unleash a huge power. And now, it was Lu Yuan's turn to face all of this. Lu Yuan was naturally powerful, but Gu Yuna was still somewhat worried about facing 5 divine kings at the same time. Damn it, if only I could fight now. Gu Yuna clenched her fists and secretly cursed. If she could stop 2 divine kings, then Lu Yuan would be able to deal with the remaining 3 with ease. But now, she could only watch Lu Yuan fight. This feeling was really uncomfortable. Don't worry, Obuchi will not lose. He is very confident. Bibi Don gently patted Gu Yuna's shoulder. Lu Yuan's eyes were firm and persistent. His body exuded an indescribable color of confidence. He would definitely not lose like this. Bibi Don is right. It is impossible for Obuchi to lose. You have not seen the power of Obuchi's god-killing spear, have you? I have. It is so terrifying that it is unimaginable. Just now, when he killed the wind god and the space god, the power of the god-killing spear was not unleashed at all. Once the power of the god-killing spear is unleashed, Obuchi's strength will increase exponentially. Even if the 5 great divine kings are extremely powerful, I still feel that the final victor will be Obuchi. Chihiro Snow said softly. When Lu Yuan's aura was comparable to a god king, she already knew that it was impossible for Lu Yuan to lose. That was because the existence of the god-slaying spear was completely unreasonable. It was basically impossible for an existence of the same level to withstand the might of the god-slaying spear. Even if 5 divine kings attacked together, they similarly could not block it either. God-slaying spear? Gu Yuna muttered softly. Looking at the god-slaying spear in Lu Yuan's hand that was emitting an endless amount of fiendish qi, she felt a lot more at ease. Lu Yuan still had the secret of Lin, the secret of being the true dragon claw, and the god-slaying spear. It seemed that there was indeed no reason for him to lose. That's right. Has Obuchi completely comprehended the clear qi god seed? Gu Yuna's eyes flashed as she suddenly asked. Although Lu Yuan was in the god realm now, he did not have a divine position. If he comprehended the clear qi god seed and fused with the clear qi god position, then he would have a 90% chance of winning. Then, he would not be able to lose even if he wanted to. He would be able to win easily just by casually playing around. Unlike now, although he was also very strong and had a similarly high chance of winning, there was always the risk of losing. After all, no one knew if the 5 divine kings had any trump cards or secret techniques. And thinking about it carefully, the possibility of this was not small. After all, the 5 divine kings had a long history. There might really be some things that were hidden. I don't know about this. Even you can't tell. So how can I tell? Chihiro Snow spread out his hands. Lu Yuan did not say anything. With his current strength, who could clearly see the depths of his strength? This is indeed not clear. Bibidon also shook his head. Lu Yuan, this guy, was always mysterious when doing things. If you were to just guess, it would be very difficult to guess. Is that so? Gu Yina muttered to herself. Her gaze once again looked towards Lu Yuan. At this time, Lu Yuan's aura had already burst forth, directly crushing the 5 divine kings' oppressive power head-on. Taking light steps, Lu Yuan held the god-slaying spear upside down. Boundless killing intent radiated from his body, crazily surging towards the 5 divine kings. The evil divine king's expression changed slightly, and his pupils contracted slightly. The Lu Yuan in front of him seemed to be exceptionally difficult to deal with. He was even more difficult to deal with than the dragon god back then. Ha! As expected, heroes come from the youth. What a strong aura. I, Lucifer, admire a young genius like you. Lucifer's figure moved, and he appeared not far away from Lu Yuan. He faced the 5 divine kings together with him. Sir, are you interested in joining forces with me to slaughter these hypocritical gods? Lucifer looked at Lu Yuan and laughed loudly as he asked. Facing the 5 divine kings at the same time, even if Lucifer had 10 times the courage, he would not dare. However, if there was Lu Yuan, who could directly crush the aura of the 5 divine kings, then it would be different, as long as he shared the burden of one divine king. Then, with Lu Yuan's strength, he would most likely be able to easily deal with the remaining 4. This kind of operation was very promising. In this way, not only would he be able to preserve his life, but he would also be able to take revenge. This was really killing 2 birds with 1 stone. Moreover, the most brilliant part was that he did not have any risks. He only needed to deal with 1 divine king. As soon as Lucifer said this, the expressions of the 5 divine kings changed at the same time. The life goddess opened her mouth, wanting to say something, but she did not say anything in the end. Her impression of Lu Yuan and Lucifer was still different. Lucifer was a true demon, but Lu Yuan merely had a different standpoint. They were both mortal enemies. It was just that some enemies were admirable, and some enemies were detestable. She had watched Lu Yuan grow up. Even if they were enemies, she did not want to see this youth, who she had once thought highly of, wallow in the mire with Lucifer. However, this choice was very wise for the present Lu Yuan. Her standpoint also determined that she did not seem to have the qualifications to advise anything. As for the evil divine king and the others, their faces were purely black, because this would directly affect the outcome of this battle. The 5 divine kings complemented each other. When the 5 of them joined forces, their strength would increase greatly. If there were only 4 of them left, then the effect would definitely be greatly reduced. Even the dragon god might not be able to defeat the 4 of them together. Facing the present Lu Yuan, they would probably lose very badly, and the consequence of losing was death. Therefore, when they heard Lucifer's words, they could not help but feel a little flustered. However, Lu Yuan was ultimately Lu Yuan. He was ultimately different from ordinary people. He was arrogant, and he hated evil. This was especially so when he faced evil soul masters. His dual pupils blinked slightly, and he looked straight at Lucifer indifferently. Lu Yuan said coldly, "You seem a little familiar. I feel like I've seen this evil aura somewhere before." "Haha, you must be joking. This is the first time we've met." Lucifer chortled and said. Chapter 1198. Lucifer chuckled as his crimson eyes flickered. He wasn't lying. This was indeed his first time meeting Lu Yuan in his original form. Is that so? Why do I feel like we've already met before? For example, in the Holy Ghost Church's secret realm. Lu Yuan said faintly with a hint of coldness in his tone. After hearing Lu Yuan's words, Lucifer knew that he couldn't hide it anymore. He smiled and said, "You do have a good memory. The one back then was actually my avatar. But come to think of it, I don't have any deep grudges with you. It could be said that we didn't get to know each other through a fight. Now that we have a common enemy, let's join forces to fight the enemy and kill these hypocritical gods. Wouldn't that be perfect? Lucifer naturally remembered the enmity from before. Otherwise, he wouldn't have gone to find trouble with Lu Yuan and hurt Chihiro Snow as soon as he was born. However, Lu Yuan was so powerful now, and it wasn't wise to fight him. Lucifer was also someone who knew when to let go. Furthermore, he hated the god realm more than Lu Yuan, so he was willing to take the initiative to reconcile with Lu Yuan and join forces with him. It could be said that Lucifer was an ambitious and ruthless person, and he was also someone who knew how to adapt to circumstances. When he said these words, ordinary people naturally could not possibly object. After all, the 5 divine kings were indeed very strong, and there was no one who would not wish to have an additional helping hand. However, Lu Yuan just happened to be an exception. He hated evil soul masters the most, especially Lucifer, who was the driving force behind the evil soul masters. He wanted nothing more than to kill Lucifer, so there was no way he would team up with him. More importantly, he could sense Chihiro Snow's aura from Lucifer's body. Chihiro Snow's body also had some injuries that hadn't healed yet. Therefore, it was very obvious who had caused Chihiro Snow's injuries. Thinking about it carefully, Guyuna was clearly staying in the Dragon Valley with him. Why did she suddenly appear and attract the attention of the 5 godly kings? How did Qianren Xue and Bibi Dong know that Guyuna is in danger, so they rushed to rescue her? These thoughts flashed through Lu Yuan's mind as he quickly deduced what had happened. It was precisely because of Lucifer's appearance that he had injured Chihiro Snow. Chihiro Snow was no match for him, and Guyuna had stepped in to help him. After that, the 5 divine kings of the god realm had been summoned, and this had led to everything that he had seen after that. Perhaps Lucifer was the one who should be blamed for this incident. Now, this guy still had the nerve to say that he wanted to join forces with him? Simply ridiculous. After going through everything in his mind, Lu Yuan's eyes were filled with coldness. He spoke softly, and his voice resounded through the sky. Share, were your injuries caused by this Lucifer? Lu Yuan turned around slightly and looked at Chihiro Snow. He needed to confirm his guess. Yes. Chihiro Snow hesitated for a moment, but still said it. As soon as he said this, the murderous intent in Lu Yuan's eyes soared. Lucifer felt a chill run down his spine, and a chill rose in his heart. Guyuna glanced at Lucifer with disdain, then said, "This guy didn't just injure Chihiro Snow. He also wanted to make Chihiro Snow his woman." Chihiro Snow was almost forced to self-destruct. "What did you say?" Hearing this, Lu Yuan flew into a rage. The murderous intent in his heart suddenly rose, and it was so strong that it couldn't be added. He'd never imagined that Qianren Xue would actually almost lose her life under circumstances where he wasn't aware. "Lucifer, how dare you?" Lu Yuan was extremely angry. He directly ignored the 5 divine kings and stabbed the god-slaying spear at Lucifer. "Obuchi, don't." Chihiro Snow was shocked. Then, he looked at Guyuna with resentment and said, "Why did you say everything? Now that you said it, even Lucifer is going to change sides. Don't tell me you want Obuchi to fight 1 against 6? 1 against 5 is not much different from 1 against 6. Lucifer's combat strength didn't increase by much. The 5 divine kings are powerful because they are a whole. They complement each other, so they are very powerful when they work together. However, it is impossible for Lucifer to work together with them. If Obuchi could really fight 1 against 5, he wouldn't care about a mere Lucifer. After all, for Obuchi, numbers don't mean much to him in the same realm. If it wasn't for the 5 divine kings being a whole, and if it was an ordinary 5 divine kings working together, they wouldn't be able to fight against Obuchi at all. And if I don't say it, when he knows what happened to you in the future, even if he doesn't say it, he will blame me in his heart. Don't you know how much he loves you and cares about you? If he really works together with Lucifer, he will definitely regret it when he thinks about it in the future, because he actually worked together with someone who covets his wife and almost killed his wife. With Obuchi's pride, How could he tolerate this kind of thing? So, it's better to give him a chance now and let him vent. Moreover, don't you want Obuchi to help you get back at him for the grievances you suffered? Guyuna asked back. Of course I do. I'm just worried about Obuchi. As long as he is safe, it doesn't matter even if I suffer some grievances. Chihiro Snow shook his head and said, but Obuchi won't think that way. He won't let you suffer any grievances. He can't even bear to bully you, so he won't let others bully you. Bibidon shook his head and said, hearing Guyuna and Bibidon's words, Chihiro Snow's beautiful golden eyes flickered. She couldn't help but look at Lu Yuan. At this moment, Lu Yuan was extremely angry. It seemed that his anger was even greater than when he saw Guyuna almost die not too long ago. Seeing Lu Yuan's angry appearance, Chihiro Snow's heart felt warm. Lu Yuan's love for her was still the same as before. She was still the reverse scale in Lu Yuan's heart that could never be touched. Lucifer died. The god-killing spear flashed with a bloody light. When the spear shot out, the wind and clouds suddenly changed. The river of stars reversed. A terrifying killing intent directly locked onto Lucifer, making it impossible for him to dodge. You lunatic. Isn't she just a woman? Lucifer clenched his teeth and used all his strength to slash down with the fallen sacred sword. He really couldn't understand. In such a dangerous situation, Lu Yuan would actually attack his only helper. This was simply incomprehensible. What do you know? She's my life. Lu Yuan shouted angrily. The god-killing spear struck the fallen sacred sword. The unstoppable, terrifying power directly sent the fallen sacred sword flying. Go to hell. Lu Yuan held the god-killing spear and stabbed it down. You can't kill me. I have an immortal body. Lucifer roared angrily. Black fog lingered around his body. Then let's see if I can kill you. Lu Yuan shouted. The god-killing spear pierced into Lucifer's body. You're tuning into the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.